We are not living in a Sutter Kane story. This is not reality.
Reality is not what it used to be.
Oh, Jesus, this place makes my head hurt.
Welcome back to Chopping It Up. We're glad to be back for our fourth episode. We're going to keep trying to pump out as much content as possible as we have so many great horror movies to cover. Today we're doing a deep dive into cosmic horror, specifically HP Lovecraft, as we look at the Paul W.S. Anderson cult classic Event Horizon. We're pairing that with John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. Once again, I'm your host, Jesse Goodman, and today we are one shy of the full Chopping It Up complement. Joel, unfortunately, was unable to make it. As he informed us, he has some previous obligations to tend to somewhere beyond the Proxima Centauri region near Neptune. We pour one out for the big homie, should he be sucked into a black hole. That's okay, though, as our venerable field reporter and co-host Michael Sled joins us, and producer turned co-host, the man who could do it all, the Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour, the big dog on the block, Mr. J, also joins us. So, gentlemen, let's get to it. First impressions or thoughts. So I'll go ahead and take the lead on this. Jazz, if you want to back up, and then Sled, you can round out the last take here. I saw In the Mouth of Madness many years ago. I'd seen it a number of times, but like a lot of these movies, it seems like it's been many years since I've revisited it. I had never seen Event Horizon, so this is my first viewing for that. I guess I want to say up front, cosmic horror or Lovecraftian horror, however we're going to refer to it, it isn't really my thing necessarily. But with a few viewings, I really started to understand it more and appreciate it for what it is. Event Horizon actually has a good deal of depth to it, and I like the man via science outstripping or overstepping his bounds. I like the element of the unknowable, the insignificance of man when faced with the breadth and scope of the universe, and the supernatural, which is all pretty much a working definition of what cosmic horror is. It started to really work for me as I took notes and rewatched it. In the Mouth of Madness is one, like I said, that I've seen before and always liked, but not really researched HP Lovecraft and the themes common there. So it hit me how well done it was and how layered Carpenter's film is, and I enjoyed both of them. I'm glad we chose them. Jazz, what'd you have?
So Event Horizon is kind of an old favorite of mine. I saw it probably shortly after it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but as soon as it hit some form of VHS or DVD, whatever 1997 was, probably still Blockbuster, Hollywood Video era. I saw that one, loved it. I was a big fan of Sam Neill at the time. I thought it was great. Revisiting it, I probably found more flaws in it than I remembered from when I first watched it when I was younger. Kind of reading some of the backstory of how the movie was made, along with sort of like the way they sort of got screwed in some ways with the editing. It makes a lot of sense, kind of the parts that are a little bit choppy, because it mostly feels like stuff that should have been in there and might have been cut out or rushed or something like that. But I thought they did a good job with the cosmic horror. I thought they really did a really nice job with the production design, especially on the Event Horizon ship itself. I thought it really did a great job sort of evoking a particular mood. And even though there's a lot of CGI in the movie, they actually did a huge amount of building things in real life, like everything with the gravity drive, that weird ass tunnel, that evokes sort of like the circles of hell as you walk through it to get to hell itself, was all built in real life. And there's some fun.
The tunnel that looks like they're walking through like a cheese grater on the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's like a meat grinder.
Basically,
I think is the actual quote in the movie.
What's it called? A meat grinder.
It looks like a meat grinder when he's first walking into it.
Yeah,
exactly. And there's some fun stories about how the actors got so disoriented walking through it, it was like impossible to shoot a continuous scene of them like walking through the whole tunnel. They had to like cut it at various points and stitch it together. And of course the movie has like the famous story around it of like the lost like orgy of hell scene.
All right,
the
hold
deleted scenes
all
that
right,
are
hold-
lost forever.
Hold on,
We'll
hold
get
on.
to that.
Yeah. Let's save that.
But you know, overall, it's you know, it's great, and it's also great just to see the huge influences from like past movies show up, but in a respectful way. Like there's clearly like huge Alien and Aliens influences. 2001.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was it stood up pretty well. A few more flaws than the past. And In the Mouth of Madness, I've seen like every Carpenter movie probably at least 6 times or something like that. At least up to like around In the Mouth of Madness. And I realized when we watched this, like I don't think I've ever seen this one end to end for whatever reason. And it is a really underrated Carpenter movie.
Yeah,
It is actually like one of it's just below the top tier of 3 or 4, I would say.
Well,
it is an excellent movie. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and we were talking about this before, that this is arguably Joel's favorite movie of all time, In the Mouth of Madness. So we'll hopefully do it some justice here in his absence. Sled, what did you have?
Yeah. Well, just a couple more
Jazz,
things on In the Mouth of Madness. It's it's like just really well constructed and like tightly put together.
Yeah.
Especially on like a rewatch, you really see all the subtle hints they drop in. I was a huge fan of all like the meta touches, like from like the humorous ones to like when Sam Neill first shows up in the insane asylum, they finally get him locked away, and John Glover's character Dr. Saperstein, which is a Rosemary's Baby reference, starts playing the music, and Sam Neill goes, "Oh no, not the Carpenters," which I assume is clearly like a name reference to the director himself. And the stuff where he's like reading the Sutter Kane books and the ink bleeds onto his hands and then his face, fiction bleeding into reality. And it's just overall like very, very satisfying, and the special effects are great. The visual effects. It's kind of funny to think Sam Neill the year before is coming off of Jurassic Park, like the famous sort of like CGI intro of CGI into movies in a big way.
I mean,
and then now and then he did this like the year after. It's just a funny juxtaposition, but I loved it.
Well, yeah, that was another thing Joel was like because Joel pitched obviously this pairing and was like the Sam Neill universe, and I just started thinking like, and I've always liked him, but he's never been like a favorite actor or someone that I followed. But like, you start looking at his filmography, and like he went on a pretty nice run for a stretch.
Yeah, he's legit.
Yeah. All right, Sled, what do you got?
So I saw Event Horizon for the first time. Actually, I distinctly remember the first time I saw it. I was in high school. I was a senior. I went to high school at a school that had some students lived there. So some of the students were boarding students, and some of them just went during the day. So I was a day student. But one of my friends was a boarding student. He was like the whatever, I don't know what they called him, but like he was like the senior in charge of his area of the dorm. So we took a break and went down to his room, actually, and he had beer in his fridge, which is definitely not allowed since we were only 17 years old, and it was a private school. But and he's like, "Oh, you got to watch this movie." And so we like watched it, and like I thought it was going to be trash because he liked a lot of trash movies, and I actually came by watching it, like my biggest takeaway from it was just like it creeped the shit out of me when I the first time I watched it, which is like a big hit for me with horror movies in general, is if they're actually scary. And so it actually like kind of scared me watching it. So I really like that about it. And I've watched it over and over again since then. Watching In the Mouth of Madness, this was actually, I had not watched it before we picked it for this. I was struck by, there's certain similarities to it, but then there's also like some really interesting contrasts. So like the tone of both the movies is so different, right? Event Horizon's a very heavy movie. Like there's some moments of humor in it and stuff, but the overall tone of it is like, even the humor is kind of gallows humor. It's like, oh shit, like kind of like stuff. Like whereas In the Mouth of Madness has a lot of kind of humor going through it along with like making you think. In the Mouth of Madness, the biggest thing I got from it was my opinion on it kind of grew on me. It's almost like a cancer. Like when I started watching it, I was kind of like, this is okay. And then like it kept getting more layered, and I started thinking more about what they were doing and stuff. And like I started to like it more. And so now I've watched it, I think 3 times now in prep for this, and it's like each time I started to appreciate it more and what was going on it as I went along. There was no moments where it scared me or creeped me out the way that Event Horizon does, just from the feeling of the vibe and stuff. But like the idea of it's very complex when you really start to sit down and think about what's going on in it and how it works out.
Yeah. See, I mine was a little bit different than yours. I'm like such a sucker for like the easy, slasher stuff is my wheelhouse. So like the scenes where Sam Neill and Styles are riding in the car on their way to Hobbs End, and it's at night, and there's like cornfields, and then there's nothing. It's just these dark roads. That's enough to set me ill at ease. Like that was actually my
favorite. So that was my favorite part. I mean, I don't want to. That'd be kind of jumping ahead.
Right.
Yeah. So like, there's nothing that disturbed me about it, I guess. I mean, there was stuff that was disturbing, but not the same way. The most disturbing scenes in it to me were. I mean, it's not an uncanny valley effect because that's more like dealing with like robots and people, but it is sort of an uncanny effect to where when you have a scene like, let's say when they first get to that town, all of a sudden they get out of there and it's bright outside, it's daytime, and it looks like a nice town and there's no one around. That feels like it's like, oh, it feels off, or like this. Yeah. So those were my favorite parts of the movie. Were those ones like that from a scary perspective.
Yeah, me too.
It's funny, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I think some of the difference in tone is I listened to an interview or watched an interview where Carpenter talks about Sam Neill in The Mouth of Madness, and he says that Sam Neill's sort of like take on the character initially when he read it was kind of comedic, and so he like played a lot of it with this sort of comedic tinge, which I think really comes through, and it affects the tone quite a bit. I mean, I don't think it messes it up. I think
no, I don't know.
Take, but it is tonally, it is that it's like less creepy.
Yeah, because Trent
in his acting,
right? Because Trent, in the character Trent, John Trent, and implicitly, just by virtue of his occupation and his disposition, he doesn't trust people. He doesn't trust scenarios. Everything is a hoax, and he gets to look through it and laugh at it and sarcastically.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
He's like a cynic. He makes light of stuff. Yeah. I mean, a perfect example. There's no like light moments in Event Horizon. Like when he's going in Mouth of Madness, when they're going through and they're driving through the cornfield, or they may have still been in like orchards at that point. Like they drive through a few different landscapes, but he ran. Why does he has like a bike horn in his compartment, and like
as one does.
Yeah, like it's
chips,
like it's
potato chips and a bike horn. Yeah. What?
But the other thing that I thought was interesting tonally was like the movies are 2 very distinct styles, and like it surprised me when you look at them, and they're made only like 2 years apart. And In the Mouth of Madness feels very 80s, like I guess I would say, like it like the feel of it is a very like 80s to Jesse and I have talked about this before, how the apex of the 80s was actually like in 93. Like
the 90s don't start till 95.
As far as people think of like 80s stuff, right? And so like the movie feels very 80s, and Event Horizon feels very 90s or after. Like it's a postmodern, I guess. Like it's not fun. It's like much more like, and so it's interesting. But they're only 2 years apart when they were actually made, and so like the difference between that tone with the two of them, I don't know. And more than a tone, just the overall aesthetic of the movie is really interesting. But I like both movies.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I guess we can go ahead and roll right into the Joel's movie stats segment from here. Obviously, with Joel absent today, Jazz is going to step in and wear a couple different hats. So what'd you find for us, Jazz?
So Joel found it. He graciously sent it to me, so I'll try to do justice to the stuff he captured, and then I have a few tidbits to throw in after as well. So starting with In the Mouth of Madness, it was released in 1994. The director is obviously our guy, John Carpenter. The writer is someone named Michael DeLuca, who, it's kind of interesting. He also did the story for Judge Dredd. And then he actually kind of like left writing, and he's now like, he became like the CEO or chairman of a variety of different, Hollywood companies like New Line Cinema. Currently, he's like co-CEO of Warner Brothers or something. So it's pretty interesting. The story of how he came up with In the Mouth of Madness is kind of interesting. He wrote basically like, walking to the Port Authority Transit Terminal each night to take the subway home from his job at New Line Cinema. He became fascinated with the numbers of homeless people who gathered about the facility. To quote, he says, "It was a really scummy building in a scummy area. And I just started to think that all the homeless people lying on the floor and hanging around the Port Authority, and a lot of New Yorkers in general, were a different species." And he says, like, late at night, it got pretty scary. And I started to think, what if everyone wandering around me is part of this otherworldly conspiracy to replace the human race? So I combined that with a Lovecraftian myth about a race of ancient beings who controlled the earth at one point, and then were banished and have been trying to claw their way back ever since. It took off from there. And the last thing was to gel. To gel was the idea of this writer being sort of a combination of Stephen King and L. Ron Hubbard. So popular that his fans constitute a religion. So
you just wiped out like half of my notes, you son of a bitch.
Sorry.
So the L. Ron Hubbard thing was going to be my big reveal, because everyone, obviously this is a Lovecraftian homage, right? And so basically, I mean, they're reading word for word at various points stories that Lovecraft wrote, but everyone thinks of Sutter Kane as Stephen King, but he's, right, as you just pointed out, as DeLuca says. And the L. Ron Hubbard connection really struck me because he's writing this pulp fiction stuff and then basing a fucking religion all around it, which is essentially what Sutter Kane's character does, right? His devotees are religious zealots in so many ways. All right. Sorry.
Exactly. Go ahead. The cinematographer, Gary B. Kibb. The producer is also Mike DeLuca. Pretty tight runtime, hour 35 minutes, which is more or less what it is for Event Horizon. The budget, $8 million, which is kind of amazing. Wow. That they did this for $8 million. That apparently was at 1.15 million. Got dropped to 8, and of course, Carpenter can do anything with any amount of money, which he did once again. Apparently, since they filmed in Canada, they were able to arbitrage the FX rate between the US and Canadian dollars to squeeze like an extra 100K into the budget over the course of the production, which is pretty amazing. It didn't do that great. It earned 8.925 million. I think it was released on December 10th, if I remember it. I didn't like note it down, but so it kind of spanned 2 years. Not exactly a Christmas movie. Yeah. So I don't know that the studio kind of like loved it. IMDb score 7.1, Metacritic score 53. Do we want to do actors now? I know you guys are chomping at the bit about at least one of them.
Oh,
should
God.
I do it now?
Well,
no,
yeah, I guess.
Let's just. You
want to jump in?
Go with what you were doing.
All right. So, go ahead, Jess. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna name our guy because I know you're ready.
All right, let's do it. Let's name our guy. Our
man, Vigo the Conqueror. Wilhelm von Homburg,
right?
And I'm just gonna toss it to you guys because I know you're ready.
Name, right?
Sled, get him. That's not his name.
Well, Jesse's excited about this. Let him have that.
Yeah. All right. I'll start it off, and I think Sled's get it. So the full reveal here is that this guy who plays Simon in the Mouth of Madness for the uninitiated, or if you haven't seen it, he has a very distinctive face, a weathered face. He's got this odd accent that you can't quite place, but he's been in so many movies, and he's a bit player. I mean, I guess he's kind of a pivotal. I don't want to call him a pivotal figure, but he's a bit guy in this movie, but Sled and I have been reading about him. There was a long form piece done on the old Deadspin site before it went to shit, and they all migrated to and created Defector. But long form piece done on him, and he's actually born Norbert Group. And he didn't like the way his name sounded. He said it sounded too much like groupie, so he changed it to Wilhelm von Hamburg. His dad, Richard, was like an actual Nazi. Group or Hamburg, whatever you want to call him, had like one of the wild, like we could do a 3-hour podcast just on his
I
biography.
think it would actually be pronounced Grupa. The E is usually pronounced in Germany, I think, in German, isn't it?
Dude, I'm a Jew. What do you're the Aryan guy on the
Yiddish,
so I don't
Germanic language. Never forget.
So you could do a whole podcast on him. I don't want to go over too much. I'm going to say a couple things that I really liked about him. Sled, I want you to go for it. He was I don't think I wrote it down because I had it committed to memory. He's a pro boxer and a pro wrestler, which I think Sled.
I think he was a pro wrestler before he was a pro boxer. His dad was also
a
boxer and a wrestler. His dad, I think, if he fought pro, it was more. I mean, boxing is not as unregulated as wrestling, but it gets close. So I think his dad was a boxer starting in World War II. Actually, I think he was seen by Nazis practicing boxing.
Yes,
and that's how he got into it, right?
That's exactly right. But I was gonna say, well, hold on, Sled. I was gonna say to those you referenced before that we were both wrestling nerds. We are also both big pro boxing fans, super fans for boxing and for wrestling. So for this guy to be a pro wrestler and a pro boxer, he went, I don't know, 30-11, 30-16.
Yeah, he had a solid record. He fought
a solid record, and he fought
the European title for light heavyweight.
Do you know who he fought? There's two big names that he fought.
Well, he fought Oscar Bonavena, who.
Yeah.
Right, and then I can't remember the other guy.
The other guy's Jürgen Blin.
Oh yeah, okay.
So these, if you're a big boxing fan, these are significant figures. But Oscar Bonavena fought Ali. Was a big opponent for him at the time. In any event, he also
Which one is
what?
Hold on.
Well, I'll keep talking while you look that up. So he also formed a tag team with his father, Richard. They were the von Hamburg brothers, which was like an expressly like Nazi. They had like the Iron Eagle cross or whatever. Probably didn't go over well. They were in California, in a territory in the California, which they never, in any of the articles I looked up, I couldn't place the territory. I don't know who was running that territory there at the time, but he eventually ended up growing his hair long as a boxer, and they called him like the Beetle boxer because he had sort of a hippie-ish look. Did you find what you were looking for, Michael?
No. I was thinking go ahead.
Well, so in any event, I mean, this guy. I think I texted Joel this since he wasn't going to be on, and he couldn't. I didn't ruin anything for him, but he also, I think, raped his sister. That's
the idea, possibly. Yeah, his half sister. He may have been also, or no, he didn't rape her. He raped his father's wife. So his half sister, he may have been her father also. Right.
That's what the connection was. Either way, this guy's a scumbag piece of shit Nazi, but he is so fucking interesting.
He had a really screwed up childhood. Like his dad was fucking, like there's pictures and then his dad's dad. I think there's mentions of like him eating like 2 pounds of raw bacon every morning for breakfast.
That's right.
Like.
That's right. That's a fact.
God. Like a fucking animal, basically. Like so you got this guy.
It's like trichinosis, like not a thing in Germany or something like that. Wow, it's amazing.
It's so for Norbert Group, it's a rough go. Vigo, as you said. Well, anyways, this turned out. I'll give you the last thing because we could literally do a whole show, but we want to keep moving. This was his last motion picture. In the Mouth of Madness. So the guy had a long run, apparently. I would love to see some pro wrestling.
You know he was in Die Hard?
Yes. Now that you say it, but now who
he
the fuck
was one of the terrorists in Die Hard.
Yeah.
Villains in Die Hard, yeah.
Wait, which one was he? He had the long ponytail.
He wasn't
right?
Carl. He was like the other blonde.
Right.
Well, besides his brother.
Well, there's multiple blonde ones, but yeah, he was the ugly one.
Right. which I suspect was his lot in like
Yeah.
almost any group. Was like
Basically.
he's that guy that looks like he's been hit with a bag of hot nickels. All right, let's go ahead and keep it moving. So
I mean, the one thing I'll just say about him in this movie, I have obviously not plumbed the depths of him as you two have, but yeah, his line delivery at various points, just like the flat German accent line delivery, just reminds me exactly of Carl Hungus in The Big Lebowski. Just like spot on.
Yeah.
You know, just like when Carl Hungus goes, yeah, that's by descent me, I'm an expert. You know, when he's there in like the porn cable movie thing. It's yeah.
I did want to say before we move on, now I really will move on after this to the other actors. Otherwise, this is going to be too long. But into the favorite quote section, which I didn't write down, so it didn't make my favorite quotes, but I did want it. Simon says, reality ain't what it used to be at some point, which is just a really clutch line. And he delivers it, like you said, like he's chewing on a bag of gravel. It's just, it really works for him. All right. Who else was in there? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, In the Mouth of Madness has like a pretty legit cast, you know, Sam Neill, who we've discussed, he was coming off of Jurassic Park. Obviously like a very well-known actor.
Yeah.
Jürgen Prochnow, like very well-known actor as well. Whenever you needed a serious-looking German guy in American movies, he was like the go-to guy for a good chunk of time.
I want to say about Prochnow also that he was the voice of Sylvester Stallone in the German version, the German dubbed version of Rocky and Rocky 2.
That's perfect.
And he was also obviously in Beverly Hills Cop 2.
That's the role I remember from when I see his face.
Yeah, like, Beverly Hills Cop 2. And he was the shit. He played, there was some fucking movie, it's like a biopic on Schwarzenegger, and he played Schwarzenegger in the movie.
That's fantastic.
So a lot of craziness.
I would pay good money to hear Jürgen Prochnow do Sylvester Stallone's mumbling from Rocky 1.
Dude. All right, so
then actually connection. There's a picture of Norbert Groot's father with Schwarzenegger at Muscle Beach.
Yes, that is right. I saw that. Yep, in Venice Beach.
He's the Nexus.
Like back
Charlton Heston making an appearance. Pretty amazing. John Glover, who's in a whole bunch of movies. Like you may know him. Like the one I remember him mostly from was he was like sort of like the oily, creepy exec in Scrooged. If you saw Scrooge, so
yeah, he's great in that.
Julie Carmen is the co-lead.
Wait. If we're gonna stay on Glover for a minute, which we'll get to later, that his character Saperstein, who works at the insane asylum in Mouth Madness, he had a really odd approach to playing him. So, like, I feel like there were scenes that were cut from the movie that involved Saperstein, that involved John Glover, because he had such a weird. I thought something was going on with him. The way he answers the phone, and it's like he's withholding information. The way he asks questions, there's some weird, like he froze his brow or he raised. Anyways, the stuff that I looked up on Glover, Jazz, this won't matter to you, Sled, but for DC area folks like Jazz and I, Saperstein raised in Salisbury, Maryland.
Oh wow!
And went to Towson for college, for undergrad. And since we were just going to move right by John Glover, I thought this was going to be a real deep dive on him. But since you guys had nothing, maybe this reveal. I was going to wait for you guys to throw a bunch of John Glover facts, and then I was going to drop this on you. But I guess no one has any John Glover facts. Sled, do you have any?
No, I'm waiting with.
He in the 70s he fucked Mick Jagger. So there you go. So that's what he claims. I have no reason.
Sure, why not?
I have no reason to doubt his veracity, and I assume Jagger fucked everyone in the 70s.
Oh man, yeah.
But anyways, we can move
Cocaine
on.
Era.
That was my Glover. That was my Glover.
Did he fuck Mick Jagger? Did Mick Jagger fuck him?
Well, I couldn't tell you.
You know?
I couldn't tell you.
They fucked.
I don't know.
They
fucked. That's all.
Yeah. That's awesome. Julie Carmen plays Styles, the co-lead. She was not a huge resume, but
she was in nothing. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. And then of course another great Bernie Casey, who's in a lot. Although my primary memory of Bernie Casey will always be the head of the the Tri-Lambs from Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Like the chief guy from the Tri-Lambs. So
You know where my big memory of him is? I mean, it is that also, but it's Spies Like Us. He was good in Spies Like Us. And did anyone know this, Sled, if you research this? He was a former professional tight end for the NFL.
Yeah, there's a whole
awesome.
group of those guys who came out of the NFL around that era who were like played similar roles. I don't know why. There must have been something going on in the movie industry.
Yeah. All right. Who else you got, Jazz?
So I think those are really like the main folks for In the Mouth of Madness.
Well, wait, I got one more. If we're gonna move
Sure.
on to the next movie, last one, and she is my kids use this.
Oh,
phrase.
sure.
My kids use this phrase all the time, and it's overused, and it hurts my ears. But she's a goat. She is, in fact, the greatest of all time. Frances Bay, who plays
I should have mentioned
plays
it
Miss,
wasn't in Joel's, but I know. Yeah.
Who plays Miss Pickman. I just want to start listing. I started going through her IMDb, and then I was like, I got to stop because I won't be able to get it all. But any movie, and we're all, well, Sled, you're a little younger than us, but growing up in the 80s, okay, every single show you ever watched, she was on. Golden Girls, Chips, Simon and Simon, Alien Nation, Who's the Boss, Happy Days, Family Ties, and then her movie resume, Karate Kid, Happy Gilmore, Blue Velvet. It's fucking, there's a million different shows and movies that she was on. She's been in everything.
Well, and of course, the thing that I remember her mostly from is she is Happy Gilmore's grandma in Happy Gilmore.
That's remember. My fingers hurt.
Yeah. I do have one random one from In the Mouth of Madness. Yeah. So, at the very end where after Trent is kind of like dropped off back in the real world, to deliver the manuscript and all, the paperboy, rolls by on his bike again. It's a different actor than the one who plays him in the first few run throughs. You know who the little kid actor is? Hayden Christensen.
You fucking nerds. He's Anakin Skywalker, dude. You know what? Right. Fuck that. If you want to go really deep, since we're just going to show each other our dicks here, that's not even a deep pull. You know what the card is on his bicycle at the end of the movie? You don't know what it is. Shit. It's a 1990 Fleer Brady Anderson Orioles. So suck on it, okay?
Wow.
That's how deep I'm going. That's right.
That is awesome. All right. Event Horizon.
Yes.
1997 release. I don't know if it was intended to originally be released in 1997, but they kind of accelerated the schedule.
That's right.
With the whole story being that James Cameron's Titanic was running late and over budget and all this stuff, and they didn't have their summer movie. So they really forced Anderson to accelerate his editing of it, get everything like going like way faster, which I think shows in the final product a bit. But of course, the director, Paul W.S. Anderson, obviously quite a lot. Like he did a ton of these sort of like sci-fi movies. What was it, like Alien versus Predator,
Soldier,
I think a couple of the Resident Evils.
Yeah.
Death Race. Yeah,
he did Mortal Kombat.
That's right.
He did basically a bunch of garbage, if you don't mind me saying so.
I mean, it's not good stuff. Yeah. I mean, he's not. It's not quality stuff. I believe he is married to Mila Jovovich, which is probably why he got stuck in the Resident Evil universe and probably other things that she's done. Yeah, Monster Hunter, exactly. Because that's his wife. Written by Philip Eisner, who also hasn't written too much. I think the story was he pitched it as a haunted house in space, or like The Shining in space.
Yeah, that's what I heard was The Shining in space. Yeah,
and he didn't have much of a treatment. Like he was like behind schedule and delivering a bunch of scripts on a deal. He said, The Shining in space. They said that sounds great, and he's like, all right, I have to somehow make this. But that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think the Shining inspired it.
I think the Shining inspiration is something I picked up on with the music in particular. Like the heavy, like that deep tones, like they do that a lot in The Shining. That's very like unsettling. Like if you remember the beginning of it when they're flying down the highway, like just up the, it's like that wide open space. Like a lot of the vibe in it, I think, comes from that Shining influence with that music.
And as in The Shining, there's a flood of blood that happens in Horizon as well.
That's a really good call. Yeah.
It was also apparently influenced by this gaming thing called Warhammer 40K, which I guess is now this whole other thing, but it started as one of those like miniature gaming situations. And it's basically about ships that travel through other dimensions, and evil spirits lurk in these dimensions, and they take control of the ships and possess the crew. And it's its own sort of like humans are locked in battle with these hostile alien interdimensional races and stuff.
So that's a video game.
Yeah, I think it is now a video game. It started off as one of those like Dungeons and Dragons, like miniatures on a board kind of strategy games, and now it's like grown into like a whole franchise with videos and probably movies and stuff.
Because I kept
Henry Cavill is trying to make a movie out of it. So
I kept coming across all of this like Warhammer 40K, that it was a prequel, a functional prequel in so many ways, but I was like, what is it? I couldn't figure out what that was. But okay,
so
sorry.
Like a role-playing like dice game?
Exactly. That's how it started. Anyway,
it's nerd shit. Look, it's nerd shit, and
we're doing a horror podcast.
We're doing this.
Who do you think you're talking to here? A bunch of nerds.
All right, go ahead. Sorry, Jess.
So you got that cinematographer Adrian Biddle, who I think no, not Adrian Biddle. I think the effects guys on Event Horizon were some folks from Ridley Scott's Alien.
Oh, hey, Jess. Sorry to bump you, but since we moved on from Eisner already, I did have a little note on him as well. He did say that the Shining in Space thing, but he had apparently come off of a pretty traumatic family tragedy, which I couldn't find the specifics for, but he said he had to force himself to write just to get his mind off of it, and this stuff just started coming to him, and that was in large part how he started at least the initial stages of the screenplay.
Yeah, I think I remember coming across some of that as well. Produced by Lawrence Gordon. Runtime also an hour 36 minutes. Although I think this is much shorter than Anderson intended it to be. There is
a half hour at least.
Accelerated cuts based on cuts based on the accelerated schedule of having to actually release the movie, and then a bunch of forced cuts just because of audience reaction and studio exec reaction on some of the initial screenings.
I mean, the execs,
I'm sure will hit.
The execs at Paramount wanted a summer blockbuster, and that wasn't. Their idea of that wasn't. I mean, I have somewhere noted in here that the initial cut was an NC-17 rating, which was like a death kiss at that time. So,
I remember seeing one interview with Anderson where he said that after they had seen the script and a lot of the production design stuff that Anderson had put together, or very early, they basically stopped watching the dailies. And so basically from like the beginning of the movie, they thought that they were getting one thing, and then the first screening, they were like, holy shit, like what the fuck is this? And then a bunch of stuff was forced. The budget was the estimated budget $60 million, which is pretty insane. Compare that to $8 million for In the Mouth of Madness. And I think they do a really great job with the visuals in this movie. Is it that much better than $8 million for In the Mouth of Madness? I do not think so. There's definitely some cheap CGI there as well, like the early 90s CGI of just like rendered on your home PC desktop. It feels like
I've seen worse.
Certainly I've seen worse
now. So I mean, I don't know.
The interior shots of like floating objects in the ship were pretty terrible. The liquid stuff with like the coolant and the stuff sticking to the guy's face was pretty laughable. I think even they should just not have done it. I think it would be better to have found some other way to do that.
Have you ever gone back and watched? Have you ever gone back and played an old video game that you played like in the 90s?
Dude, are you thinking I don't play Mike Tyson's Punch-Out every day with my kids? Because I do.
But I'm even talking about like go back and play like so. GoldenEye came around the same time of this, and I remember playing GoldenEye and thinking like, "Holy shit, this looks real." And if you go back and watch, like if you go back and look at GoldenEye, it looks so bad. Like compared,
it's just like a
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
a bunch of 3D rectangles running around.
I was smashing people with the PP7. I would shoot them right in the head. Oh yeah.
All right.
Sorry. Okay.
And then it did terrible. Domestic gross was 26.7 million. International 500,000. Big bust. I think a lot of the actors and Anderson and stuff are just like, well, it was marketed weirdly, and this wasn't even the movie that the final cut is not the movie that we intended to make. So. It sort of really didn't get its fair showing. All the footage is like lost They stored it in some salt mine. And so like the famous orgy of death scene and
Yeah, I heard
everything
they
else,
hired,
it's like you can't
actual
recreate it.
actors to do the orgy.
Dude, we're killing all my notes here. Yes, all real porn actors and amputees, legit amputees and porn actors. Dude,
the scenes where people had their teeth knocked out, they had to get people who didn't have teeth.
Man.
So it was some really really good stuff on the B unit, second unit filming on the weekends there. Speaking of filming, it was filmed at Pinewood Studios at the exact same time that Eyes Wide Shut was being filmed there.
Jazz,
right next door.
Where's Pinewood Studios? Pardon me, I'm not.
London, somewhere.
In London. Okay, that's
outside London.
Okay, all right, okay.
But it was being filmed on the exact same at the exact same time, like basically in the next door studio or lot or whatever, to where Eyes Wide Shut was being filmed. Which, in some ways,
so is this
a
secret Kubrick film? That's like that.
I'm sure maybe his influence seeped through.
This really came from was he was coming over.
But I mean, like, what's reality and stuff is sort of like some things that underpin both movies. So I
for
that
sure,
was kind of like interesting tidbit.
Before we move too far, I know we just talked about their special effects and how it's sort of in '97 or whenever that it, especially with the liquid on the inside didn't look very good. There were two tidbits from the shooting that I had. One was at the opening shot of Dr. Weir from the ship's window. That took the special effects crew 10 weeks to achieve. So we were talking about a timeline and scope of abilities here that just were not at all what it's like now. And then the other thing was the rotational shot of the space station over Earth at the beginning took that shot alone took about a third of the film's visual effects budget. They blew it all in that shot. So I thought those two facts were interesting.
IMDb score 6.6, Metascore really low 35, which I think is horribly unfair. Obviously, our man Sam Neill back in play as Dr. Weir.
Can we get into a bio on Neil real quick? So he's
let's do it.
He was it's all from memory because I didn't note that down. But he grew up in New Zealand, but he was born in Ireland. Is that correct?
I know him from Australian movies because the first movie I ever saw
him in Northern Ireland.
Dead Calm. Yeah,
you fuck. They're not the same.
Yo, sorry. Sorry. So he's from fucking Northern Ireland. He grew up.
Yeah, have you ever been there?
What's that?
Nothing. That was an Irish accent.
I missed it. Say it again. It's all going to be Conor McGregor shit now. So no matter what accent we're trying to do, it's all going to sound like Conor McGregor. So he was born in Northern Ireland. I guess he spent some time in Australia, like you're saying, Jazz, but he did grow up in New Zealand. I think he's basically Kiwi.
I mean, I know him originally from Australian movies. Like I said, the first movie I saw him in was actually Dead Calm.
Loved
Nicole Kidman back in the day.
Billy Zane. Good flick.
Yeah, Billy Zane.
Yeah.
Then we have Lawrence Fishburne as Captain Miller, and he's just coming off of, I think, Dead Cover, which is probably his big one. Prior to that, kind of
Deep Cover.
Deep Cover. Sorry, blew him up, and Lawrence Fishburne is incredible in this movie. I think he nails it. I think this is basically a different, much worse movie without Lawrence Fishburne putting in that performance. I don't know if we need to talk about all the things everyone knows Lawrence Fishburne. I don't think we need to talk about all this stuff.
But
if you guys have
done any other horror movies besides Apocalypse Now?
Horror movies.
You fucking cheap shotting bastard.
Let's see. I mean, unless you have it ready to go. Oh, he did Predators. The one decent sequel to the Predator franchise.
Oh, that was
the one on that other
Adrian Brody, right?
That's the one, yeah.
I haven't.
So that's
seen that.
That wasn't bad. That was
the best of the sequels, hands down.
That was the gritty Predator remake, right?
Yeah, and I think I don't know of anything that would really qualify as horror. Lots of sci-fi. He's a big sci-fi fan, so he does lots of sci-fi stuff.
I would submit that King of New York was urban horror. Is that right, Sled?
I mean,
Am I
maybe
doing this right? Am I doing this right?
it was a little surreal. He was very crazy.
He was then Larry Fishburne, and his best line was, of course, "Where's my fucking chicken? Where's my chicken?" Which he screams at Wesley Snipes as he lay dying. Which
Or I
is a
mean,
great
I
scene.
don't know. Is
Oh, hey, he was in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors as he played somebody named
Oh.
Max. I'm not familiar with that one, but there you go.
you not
He was
familiar
also.
with? It's coming up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got to do that. He was also in Death Wish 2, Death Wish 3, 2. I think he was in Death Wish 2. He was in one of the gangs. All right,
he
let's
was in
move.
Jeff Goldblum's in the other one. But
That's right. That's right.
We also have Jolie Richardson. Pretty sort of like comes from like a very sort of distinguished lineage of British actors. Her mom is Vanessa Redgrave.
Okay.
And she was cast in the movie. Her part was originally written for a man, and Paul Anderson cast her instead.
That
just
really
because he thought it would be great to have like a really like soft English rose, just covered in blood and be subjected to everything that everyone's subjected to in this movie.
Really
and
makes.
he asked if she would like to have something hot and black in her.
Dude, you rewrote out. That really makes Cooper's line really fucking odd now.
The one bit of comedic stuff the bits of comedic stuff in this movie is clearly coming from Cooper.
Yeah, that's it.
Maybe a little bit from Smith in the beginning, but mostly Cooper. Jason Isaacs, who's been in like a ton of stuff. I know him primarily as like the bad guy from The Patriot, like the evil British guy from The Patriot, Mel Gibson's Revolutionary War movie. But he's been in a lot. Like these are legit actors. We could go list tons of stuff on their filmography. So
we got to move. Jess.
Yeah. And Kathleen Quinlan. The one thing I'll mention is the guy who plays Justin. His something Noseworthy, I think the actor.
Jack Noseworthy.
He was in Encino Man. He was one of the main sort of like hangers-on in Encino Man with Brendan Fraser, which is like, I recognize that guy. What is it from? It was from Encino Man. And yeah, there you go. Actors.
Excellent job. And we were just chock full between both of these films. So much stuff to do. So we are running behind. So let's get it moving. The next segment, of course, is cultural/cinematic import, which is really where we dig into the meat of this. We examine the through lines between both movies, similarities, differences, compare and contrast, and really touch on a lot of the themes going on here. So I did want to say, I guess just to kick it off, to give a working definition, because for me, I never read Lovecraft, and I was not into cosmic horror, as it were. So I looked it up, and for our purposes here, for your listeners' purposes, Lovecraftian horror, also called cosmic horror, is a subgenre of horror fiction, emphasizes the horror of the unknowable and incomprehensible more than gore or other elements of shock, named after American author HP Lovecraft in the early 1900s. His work emphasized themes of cosmic dread, forbidden and dangerous knowledge, madness, non-human influences on humanity, religion, and superstition, fate and inevitability, and the risks associated with scientific discoveries. Event Horizon. Blah, blah, blah. And then it says, number of characteristics, fear of the unknown and unknowable, fear and awe we feel when confronted by phenomena beyond our comprehension, whose scope extends beyond the narrow field of human affairs and boasts of cosmic significance. Contemplation of mankind's place in the vast, comfortless universe revealed by modern science. And so the horror springs from that. Of course, that's a literal setting in Event Horizon and more of a figurative setting in The Mouth of Madness. But so let's launch into it. Jazz, you want to lead hit here for themes and things that you saw, any significance and anything?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll start with Event Horizon a bit. So one thing is just like in terms of like what is influenced by, obviously Aliens, 2001, just in terms of like the visuals and stuff like that. But in terms of like themes, it's very much more like, you could say The Shining obviously has a huge sort of like influence in terms of, the ways in which we're slowly driven mad, what's real.
Well, with
how
your
our past comes to haunt us. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say with your 2001 reference, it's for me it was HAL. The ship taking agency over the people that inhabit it. Sort of the similar thing here with Event Horizon, obviously.
Yeah. There's there's the Hal part, the sort of like man losing control of his invention, or his invention turning on him. What you could even like sort of say like almost there's like a Frankenstein, if you want to go back to like the original, sort of like
Shelley.
that's the literal sort of thing here. Like here's the scientist who created the thing, and the thing is like turning on him. That it's a very sort of like scientist creation gets out of control, sort of like theme there. They don't mention it so explicitly, but clearly there's sort of like Lovecraftian elements of like there's some other dimensions with like big bads who, it's not quite the same thing, like they're returning to what is rightfully theirs, but they're certainly like looking to wreak havoc on humans or use humans to their own ends. And in this case, it's like I need a crew for the ship needs a crew to actually pilot it and kind of like do its thing or do whatever it needs to do. It for all the control it has, it still has to work through humans. It can't work instead of them or like replace them or take them over per se. And so it does need the humans to do it. And then I know that this influenced quite a bit in terms of like cultural stuff. There's a pretty popular famous video game series, Dead Space, where I think the first Dead Space video game was pretty much like extremely heavily influenced by Event Horizon, and they're very open about the Event Horizon influence on the game, both in terms of like visuals. I think even some of the names of the ships have some overlap, but just the things this crew unleashes from deep space or comes across in deep space. There's a much worse sort of things go wrong in space movie that came out a few years after called Pandorum, which was clearly influenced by Event Horizon. It's much worse. Dennis Quaid, I think, is the main guy in that one. And then there's but I really think a lot of it is just sort of like the core cosmic horror themes. Like we're small. When we reach beyond where we're supposed to go, things will turn on us. Our hubris will come up to bite us. We'll be punished for our hubris. Very much in the movie, everyone except Weir talks about we're not meant to travel faster than light. You're not supposed to do that. When not the first time they encounter the gravity drive, but I think the first time Weir brings Miller and Jolie Richardson's character, I forget her name, it's escaping me for the moment.
Stark. Lieutenant Stark. Yeah.
When they bring them down, it says, it creates a black hole, and Jolie Richardson Stark is just like in shock. He's like, and you did it. And he's like, of course, we had to. So I think that's like a very much like a big theme.
Yeah, I mean,
but then the other theme is just to wrap up the Event Horizon one for me is like the way that we bring the past wherever we go, how it haunts us. And this is something that's very different from how it's handled in The Mouth of Madness. But everybody, like the visions everyone has is about like guilt they experienced from the past, coming to manifest itself in their hallucinations, in their visions, on the ship. Whether it's Miller's, having to abandon his crewmate when there was the fire on the previous ship, the Goliath or whatever it was. The Kathleen Quinlan's character having to leave her son behind, and of course Weir's guilt over his wife's suicide. That's like sort of the other theme. It's like this is the stuff that's being exploited, sort of by the ship to achieve its ends.
Yeah, I mean you nailed a bunch of it there. I wanted to, sorry, Michael, you go ahead and let me know what you thought as far as themes, and you can mix and jump back and forth between the two. You don't have to isolate it.
I was actually going to comment on. I thought there were some at least visual effects that were from In the Mouth of Madness that were put into or at least given homage to within Event Horizon. For one, like the scarification that Sam Neill does on his face is very reminiscent of like what he does to his face when he sits down and he's drawing with the one black crayon, as the guy says, as he's in the cell. So there was definitely an influence coming from that. There's also the cross the window within the, I guess I don't know if it's the pipe, the captain's room or whatever with
The bridge, yeah.
is like a cross, but it's not quite like a normal cross, but it is similar to a lot of the crosses that he also draws on his face in that.
So yeah, I was gonna say, just as far as I don't know, just recurring leitmotifs or whatever, but the idea of like cruciform shapes, columns, and vaults, like a lot of the Event Horizon, how the ship was modeled on like the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Yeah.
And then the long corridor resembles like a church nave, and like you said, all of these sort of, some of them are inverted crosses if you could look at it that way.
Well, they're seen really similar in at the Mouth of or when he in the Mouth of Madness, when he goes back. There's several scenes where it's like looking down that same cathedral type corridor when he's going places. Not just I mean, there's the bridge one when he first goes to the city, the town, right? Which is also, I don't know how much y'all have. Jay, have you read a lot of HP Lovecraft?
Yeah, I read a good amount.
We read a lot of Stephen King.
Actually, probably less than I've read Lovecraft.
There's a story that Stephen in Hobbit. I think that's an actual maybe location in the UK, but there's a story that Stephen King actually wrote also in the early '90s called Crouch End, which is a homage to like Lovecraftian type stuff. Like, it's very Lovecraftian. So like, there's a lot of things within. But yeah, that cathedral, like that long look. There's several scenes between both the movies that share that through them that you see.
There's also a lot of iconography in Event Horizon that's kind of like coffin shapes. Like the doorways are coffin shapes. You could argue like the grav tanks are in some sense like sort of coffin-like, but I know that's another theme that they intentionally inserted. That shape.
Well, the whole idea of being in a spaceship is a peripatetic coffin in and of itself, right? Like you can't escape. But Jazz, before we get too far from it, you mentioned almost offhandedly Sam Neill or Dr. Weir in Event Horizon, how his wife committed suicide or died by suicide, which a lot of that was cut in that 30 minutes plus that was cut from the film. And I think it would have explored some of that stuff. There was some, so I have here in my notes Andrei Tarkovsky's 1972 Solaris, which is heavily influential on Event Horizon. The plot for that was a psychiatrist is sent to a space station to investigate what made the crew go insane, which is almost exactly the plot that we're looking at here. Both protagonists are widower scientists, and both wives died by suicide. So I think there was a lot more going on that we were supposed to see and hear that we didn't get.
Well, yeah, each person it's facing something. Like when he kills the doctor, like when he slams him down on the table and opens up his shirt, he already has a scar.
Yeah, right?
Yes, right.
That's got to be something that we just don't get.
One of the ideas that I thought about when I was watching it a few times was like, is any of this actually happening? Is like kind of like, I think maybe there's some of that they didn't emphasize as much when you watch the movie because they're supposed to be getting low on CO2. So maybe are they going crazy? Because there's, for a long period of the movie, each person's only seeing things themselves, right? And then there's a distinct moment when they get to, which I think is when she first hears like the banging and then runs into the room and they're all in there together and Sam Neill's like open the door and gets up and starts going to walking up. That's like the first time where they're all experiencing the phenomena. So that's where it goes from being like, oh, is this all happening or is it not? Right.
Right. But there's that same thread, if we're going to connect them, which is what we do, of that whole meta element where it's like we're waking from it, that same cinematic like twist of, oh, we're waking from a dream. And then in The Mouth of Madness, Carpenter has you wake from a dream and then wake from that dream. And so they're playing a lot like that.
In Lovecraft stuff. Lovecraft, like my favorite Lovecraft book is Dream Quest of the Unknown Cative. I call it a book. It's really an assemblage of various things, but it's like, it's really hard to read. And I think part of why I liked it and why it is hard to read is because it is like dreams are screwed up, right? Like, and they do that. That's probably one of my favorite things about In the Mouth of Madness is how they segue, but there's certain scenes that section to where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like you went from like the skip, you went from something that's happening that was sensical to like, you're all of a sudden in these like disoriented, and that's how dreams are, right? Like you have something and you keep doing it and then you're not like, and you've got your lucid dreams to where he like with the cop and the thing, like you want some too. And he like keeps waking up and reliving it over and over again. that was probably it definitely explores that in your head difference between like reality versus what's going on just in your mind. And I guess it's the In the Mouth of
I do think I don't know if this is better to say for like compare or contrast, but I will say like definitely like watching Event Horizon, I think it's like less mysterious of like what's real and not real.
Yeah.
You could say like, there's like the carbon dioxide thing and, it may cause some hallucinations, but there's tons of physical stuff that's like going on.
Yeah.
There's like the thing that like blows up the ship and like there's
we're
doubt about all that. But,
we're more rooted in reality for sure in Event Horizon.
And it's a much more like linear story of like this happens. Yeah.
But Jazz, also the compare and contrast, we fold right into this cinematic import section. So like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll say on the compare and contrast for sure is like, and this I think is, I have to assume this is down to some of the edits or forced cuts or something that we didn't get that was there. It was, the sort of Sam Neill's, Dr. Weir's like transition from just sort of like, disturbed about the past, but, he's a scientist doing his job on this mission to like really quickly flipping the bit to being like against the crew and crazy in a very, I think, like unearned way. It's like, did we miss some bits that were supposed to sort of like buttress that more? Because it really just seems like all of a sudden he went like, I thought like in both movies, it's funny how he's kind of like a smug, self-satisfied asshole. That's like a common theme through both In the Mouth of Madness and in Event Horizon. But like whatever he transitions to in Mouth of Madness is extremely earned throughout, like beat by beat. It's like very, very earned. Whereas Event Horizon is like, wait a minute, why are you all of a sudden acting this way? Like you're really you got here quick, bud. Yeah.
He gets up at one point to go unlock or open the door.
Yeah,
that these demons are beating down. Stark puts him in a hammer lock, an arm lock. Takes him to the ground, and then you're like, oh well, clearly they're gonna detain him here and restrain him in some form or fashion because he's a loose cannon. They can't have that, but they don't. They immediately are like, oh wait, there's a noise. We got to run to the other bay, and they just run off, and they never acknowledge that like this guy's now. We cannot trust him to do anything. He's jeopardizing our lives.
And I have a theory that maybe it's not. I mean, so there's the idea that maybe he got possessed by whatever came to the thing, right? And I actually one idea I had about the idea of like because they showed the hammerlock really graphically, like she grabs her and like easily restrains him, right? Like he's like, oh, and then like cut to not that much long later, and he's like throwing the doctor dude around the room and just like smashing and guts.
He's throwing.
Like,
he's throwing him.
It's the same person still. Like, I mean. It's like a question thing going on. Like it's like, was that on purpose to show this isn't the same? And then they kill him and he comes back, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like
or Captain Miller sees him. I mean, whether he comes back or
he sees something. But I mean, there are questions of is it all in their at least, or is a lot of it in their head? There's actually
that's big questions at the end. We have a questions segment to close this thing out.
One more thing I was going to add is like from a cultural influence was there's actually because like going to In the Mouth Madness with Stephen King. So one of Stephen King's big monsters is It, right? And so if you actually watch Event Horizon, a lot of what's going on is similar to how It works. It is supposed to be a monster that's from. And you have to read a lot of Stephen King to know, but he's from he's like a Todash, which is like this other realm that's kind of between realms kind of place. And he can see, and he feeds on fear, right? Like he feeds on emotion. And there's supposed to be other things like this that feed on emotions. And they can make you see things and feel things and do whatever. So that to me, there's a lot of similar. I don't know if there's a conscious similarity between them, but that is one connection between both of them. To where the author is supposed to be connected to Stephen King, and in this monster, even though it's in space, has a lot of the same powers that the It monster has.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, you guys touched on a lot of the themes here and cultural and cinematic significance. So I don't know how much I can bring up on that, but I got
more on Mouth.
We still have plenty more to discuss, but I just meant as far as stuff that we haven't even broached yet. Religion is something for me. Both of these were at least somewhat a meditation on on theology. In terms of the epic battle between good and evil, heaven and hell, these demons or Satan itself, from another dimension that we can't understand, comprehend. That's obviously, like we said, with the physical cues in Event Horizon on the ship itself, with a lot of the crucifixes and stuff, and the same imagery evoked in the Mouth of Madness throughout. Both Christ-like figures in Sutter Kane, and with his minions doing his bidding. But I was actually wondering about who was really running things in the Mouth of Madness. I mean, Sutter Kane sort of positions himself as God or a god, but he does reference his new publishers, I think, is as he refers to them, these demons from another dimension behind the banging down the door.
He says he can't hold them back at a certain point.
Yes,
he's almost like Nyarlathotep if you read Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Now what is that? That's that's above my head.
Rolling chaos. He's like he's kind of like a minor god kind of guy, but he's okay. I don't know. He's like a messenger between the old one. Like I don't know. There's a lot of different stories, so the consistency between them is not always like super great, and whether that's intentional or not. Jay,
well, I wasn't gonna comment specifically on the Lovecraft sort of like tie-in. I was gonna say like to me I thought the movie was like fairly clear that he even says at some point I think when Styles first comes across him in the church and says, he says like all this time I thought I was making it up, but now I realize they were just feeding me what they wanted me to write. Or, I'm paraphrasing, but more or less he was saying that. So he's being fed by his new publishers, the old ones, or the monsters who are going to come through the portal or whatever that he tears later on. So it's like they are using him to write, and his popularity, they feed on belief. He's like the more people believe, the easier their road to return will be. Now, that doesn't preclude like it's still Sutter Kane, and that's just part of his delusion, but at least like that's what Sutter Kane was sort of like saying in the movie, that maybe he wrote them into existence as well, potentially, I don't know, or were they actually the ones influencing him?
Jesse, would you want me to read you the summary of Nyarlathotep?
Oh, less than anything in the world, but I guess we might have to.
Just so you know what I like. So
yeah, let's hear it.
Differs from the other beings in a number of ways. Most of them are exiled to the stars, blah, 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 or sleeping and dreaming. He, however, is active and frequently walks the earth in the guise of human being, usually a tall, slim, joyous man. He has 1,000 other forms. Most of these are reputed to be maddeningly horrific. Blah, 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 blah. Most of the gods use strange alien languages, but Nyarlathotep uses human languages that can be mistaken for human beings. The other outer gods and great old ones, who he references the old ones in this, which is like if you hear old ones in any kind of thing, it's basically like someone who's read HP Lovecraft, right? Are often described as mindless or unfathomable rather than truly malevolent. But Nyarlathotep delights in cruelty, which he does a bit in the movie, right? He's just like fucking with this guy, like for no good reason, really. Like think about like, did you ever tell you my favorite color is blue on the that's just like jacking with him, right? So,
well, can I say something since we walked into that before I forget? No, before I forget, he says my favorite color is blue, and the whole screen turns blue. Everything in the universe turns blue. Prior to that, we get hints that Kane is in control because anytime there's a close up on anyone, all of their eyes are blue. So,
yeah. But he delights in cruelty, is deceptive and manipulative, and even cultivates followers and uses propaganda to achieve his goals. He enacts the will of the outer gods and is their messenger, heart, and soul. He is the servant, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it just goes on. So that, like, if I was going to a Lovecraft guy, that's, like, kind of who, like, I would look as kind of what's inspiring that character.
Okay. Yeah, no, but everything else, as far as themes and cultural significance, you guys already touched on.
I'll hit a couple more on Mouth. The other things should we do more contrast things here, or things that
Sure.
are different between.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one
what do you
thing
got?
that I'd say is interesting in the difference is, in both of them, it seems like whatever that the greater powers, the malevolent powers need humans for something. It's like the ship needs humans to actually operate the ship or do whatever. In Event Horizon, in the Mouth of Madness, it needs the humans to believe. Like it's only through their belief that their road to return is created. I think one thing that's interesting in the difference is like, the way in which like the humans are manipulated, I suppose, in each is somewhat different. In the ship, in Event Horizon, it's like it's playing on their guilt. It's using things from their past. It's using reality like against them, their own realities against them, to get it to to do what it wants, or just kill them or whatever. Some of the things are just like, I just want to kill you. And then in the Mouth of Madness, it's like there's no past for many of these characters. Almost by definition, it's like there is no past to you. You were written. There's that, and there's no like, we don't need to use your past. It's reality is being overwritten. Like the monsters are coming in. Like at the beginning, the humans themselves get sort of transformed into monsters, and they're the ones causing mayhem or whatever. But certainly the implication at the end of the movie is like, the monsters are there and the humans are getting wiped out or whatever. But it's just different. It's like there's no past guilt sort of aspect to it. It's just really like your world is getting overwritten. We don't need your past to manipulate things. We're not trying to do that. It's just like we're just creating things out of whole cloth in your new reality.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, that's because that's exactly what Kane is doing in the Mouth of Madness, right? He's rewriting. I mean, so for example, right, Linda Stiles, the book editor for Arcane Publishing, who accompanies John Trent, she doesn't exist, right? He comes back, and we never sent you with anyone, says Heston, Jackson Harglow. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, who this woman is, right? Well, they just fucking wrote her out, and that's what she says when she hands off the manuscript to Trent as he sprints away from the demons. It's like, I can't go with you. I wasn't written that way. Like that's it. We don't need to know the past, and the past can change or it can never exist. So, and that's just some of the stuff that I think, like, it just in terms of being a superior movie from like soup to nuts. Carpenter, I think the big difference here is Carpenter, right? It's obviously, like the jump in direction from Anderson, who I don't think that highly of, and then Carpenter, who's just a master. He's a virtuoso, and he's doing this. And this was part of we didn't mention this yet, but this was the Mouth of Madness was the final installment of what Carpenter deemed the Apocalypse trilogy, which began with, let's see, the middle one was Prince of Darkness, the last one's in Mouth of Madness, the first one is The Thing. Is that right?
That's right.
So that didn't even occur to, I mean, I didn't understand what that really meant, the Apocalypse trilogy. I had to really get into it in the research leading up to tonight's ep. What cosmic horror really was and why this was the apocalypse horror. Well, he's concerned with, and this is what really makes him fundamentally Lovecraftian, is the end of the universe and our insignificance as mankind up against that, the breadth and the scope of it. And like, that's what this is about. And that's what The Thing was about. I never saw Prince of Darkness. We'll get to that, I'm sure, later in the podcast. And that's what In the Mouth of Madness is about, like reality not existing, people, mankind becoming extinct. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, all the elements of the Apocalypse trilogy involve some aspect of that's the end for humanity in some in some form or another. And yeah, it's In the Mouth of Madness is a clearly superior movie to Event Horizon, just in terms of like the quality of, I mean, just by like a literally like a fraction of the budget, just like the way it was shot and plotted, and just like held together, and like every beat is really earned with the characters. I have some quibbles on Linda when we get to questions later, but in general, it's like it's really earned, everything that happens. Maybe a couple rush bits at the end, but like it's really earned. Whereas I think like Event Horizon, it's like again, the Weir character, a lot of this stuff just seems like, where did this come from? This seems sudden. The other thing we didn't mention about a contrast between the movies is fundamentally about how they end, since we're talking about the apocalypse part. In the Mouth of Madness ends with, obviously we're at the threshold of the, end of humanity, and the implication in Event Horizon is like, well, the good guys won for now. They were able to send us back to the other
They were
realm.
spooling that up for a sequel. That's what I.
Yeah,
it wasn't clean. Event Horizon was not a clean ending. I think Sled was.
I think it was pretty clean.
I
think Stark. Okay.
So Stark and
Cooper.
And Cooper. How the fuck, by the way, does Cooper? I pegged Cooper as being the first one killed. I have no idea. Maybe I'm stuck in some antiquated the black guy dies first in horror movie shit. But Cooper survived. Anyways, so Cooper,
actually Justin survives too, even though he's mangled. Yeah.
Right. He's a vegetable though. All right. So Cooper and
There's
Stark
also no scenes where Cooper interacts with the thing. Really, are there? I'm trying to think back of any
and he doesn't have any hallucinations or any of that stuff.
So hold on. So they escape via they break the umbilicus. The umbilicus, great name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which also we can talk about that. I think there were some social themes going on here, but we can get there.
Yeah, I mean they're on the Lewis and Clark. They're exploring out into the unknown.
Yeah, but I was going to talk about shit. Well, anyways, let me just get there. Let me circle back to that. But so Stark and Cooper make it there, but to clean up the ending, they come out. And she has the vision of Weir, with the devil mutilated face coming out of one of the rescue people, and then she wakes from that dream. We get the same. Mm-hmm. We get the almost Carpenter wake from the dream thing that meta reality versus and. Then the ship's doors close automatically. That closes us out as the audience seeing the movie, and it ends it. We don't see anyone closing that. That is still part of the Event Horizon, the ship which we assume has taken on its own life, right?
Well, no, it went through a black hole, right?
They blew it in half. And so the part that went into the black hole was the part with the gravity drive.
That's right.
And then the crew quarters or whatever goes. Yeah.
But we're presuming that that's the end of it. But that's still part of the ship.
The gravity drive's on the other side now.
But what's to say?
Either way, I'm just saying it preps it to make there's.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's my contention too. But since we were on it, before I forget,
there's a positive end. They got rescued. It's very
right. It's not as right. It's not as nihilistic, I guess, in that way.
Yeah.
Well, so I came across this in one of the articles I read. It's like maybe there's a little more going on in Event Horizon that Anderson wanted to say. And there's the theme of abortion and bodily autonomy for women.
Oh, Jesus.
Hey, we went through all your fucking nerd shit, okay, and the board games, all right? Can we talk? This is a thing. By the way, for any audience members listening, I want you to notice that every single episode I come up with some women perspective here, and every single time these fucking misogynists shoot it down, and they fucking.
I'm not shooting it down.
I didn't say anything.
Jazz, I know you son of a bitch.
I haven't even thought about it. I want to hear it.
No, it was basically that. So the umbilicus, which is obviously the umbilical, right? The stand-in for the umbilical cord, the connection between that, and they fucking blow it up at the end, right? Which is cutting off and killing the life.
They were birthed from life. Are we getting really metaphorical?
So I'll just point out the primary flaw in this theory. The umbilicus was the thing that went from the Lewis and Clark to the Event Horizon. The thing that connected the two parts of the Event Horizon, I don't know if it had a name, but it wasn't the umbilicus.
Right. Well, in any event, I didn't have. It wasn't my theory. It was just something that I came across while reading. But yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and kill it like you would an unborn child, then that's fine.
Well, I do have two other sort of like influence related things from in the Mouth of Madness. So one of the things it influenced was there's another video game called Alan Wake, and basically, Alan Wake doesn't cite in the Mouth of Madness as an influence, but I assume that's just because they don't want to get sued, because the entire plot, and I played this game back in the day before I ever saw in the Mouth of Madness, the entire plot is very much like ripped off of in the Mouth of Madness. It's basically about a story about a best-selling crime novelist named Alan Wake, trying to uncover the mystery about his wife's disappearance during a vacation in a small fictional town called Bright Falls, Washington. And he experiences events that are the plot of his novel unfolding during the game. And, you know, there's the manuscript of the novel comes up during the game. There's people trying to like complete the novel. You know, he just, it's this reality questioning thing, you know, what's fiction, what's reality, I'm writing reality thing. It's very much the game. The other one that's kind of, I don't think it was directly influenced by In the Mouth of Madness, but it's extremely similar theme. I think the movie came out a couple years later, called Existenz, which is kind of like In the Mouth of Madness, sort of, except with video games. There's like a person was like, they create this famous video game that's like super popular, and there's all these scenes in the movies that eventually turn out to be part of the video game. And you know, it's just this like sort of Matryoshka doll, sort of dream within dream, or sort of simulation within simulation kind of thing that happens. And at the end, it's left extremely ambiguous, where, you know, somebody comes and like assassinates, you know, the creator of the video game because of its influence on society, and the audience members view this assassination just kind of like, you know, dumbstruck, until somebody stands up and says, "Hey, is this still part of the game?" And the movie kind of ends on that cliffhanger. And then the last one, which you guys would know better, because I actually haven't seen this movie, was the very same year. So it's more a similar theme, not an influence. The Wes Craven's New Nightmare came out. Yeah. And I think that one also had like some meta theme.
I don't know
of,
if
it was like, you know, where it reimagined Freddy Krueger as kind of like simply like a mask or something worn by some ancient supernatural being. Where the being derives its power from the popularity of the film, the actual Nightmare on Elm Street film series. So
right, yeah, no,
happened exactly at the same time as this came out.
You ever read American Gods by Neil Gaiman?
American Gods, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the same, like the gods are powered by belief, right? Like, okay.
I think a friend of mine wrote a film thesis on the Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So there's certainly a lot of layers going on. But yeah, like you said, I either haven't seen it or I saw it so many years ago I can't recall. But that should definitely be something that we revisit. There was something else, just I don't want to keep backtracking, but there's so many things I feel like we're missing. We talked briefly about the hellish blood orgy scene that we get snippets of in Event Horizon, which is supposed to characterize hell. And I think we didn't mention, but I looked up that a lot of those visions were taken from the 16th century Renaissance painter Hieronymus Bosch and his characterizations of hell in his paintings that Paul Anderson was largely influenced by, which I thought was pretty interesting. And a couple of just throwaway stuff before we move too far. We're talking about stuff floating by in the beginning, that in the ship in Event Horizon, you know, this liquid stuff. There was also in the opening credits, the book that floats by. There's a book that floats by, and on it, there's basically a cameo by Anderson. It's a picture of Anderson, and it's like a faux biography titled "Paul Anderson: A Life," which he threw in. And then there was also another thing that floats by is an Omega Speedmaster watch, which was the same type of watch was worn by Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong on their.
Oh, right. I remember, reading that trivia.
And I think we talked about, well, I was going to say there's some Hellraiser influences on In the Mouth of Madness.
Definitely when he kills the doctor.
Say again?
When he kills the doctor, he hangs him up with books and stuff.
Oh, you mean Event Horizon or In the Mouth of Madness?
I meant In the Mouth of Madness, but yes, also
both.
But also in Event Horizon. And then there was so the core gravity drive was apparently designed based on the puzzle box from Hellraiser itself.
Right.
And then there's the theory that Hellraiser and the Cenobites are basically time warp demons as a prequel to Event Horizon. Clive Barker worked in consultation with Anderson on the film. So I thought those things were definitely there as well, which were pretty interesting. Oh,
I think that Madness reminds me actually a lot of Hellraiser when he's when he's in right before he gets teleported back to the world where he sees Darth Vader Jr., the creepy monster things are like all coming down the thing.
Yeah.
The look of them. If you go back and watch Hellraiser when Christy Cotton first goes into like down into hell and the thing chases her through the hallways, it's a very similar kind of animation to it.
Well, in the Mouth of Madness, it's funny because I think initially Carpenter rejected. He was offered the role to direct it and rejected it. And originally they had slated to direct it was Tony Randall, who was the director of Hellraiser.
Okay.
So I think it was close to a year before they passed around these stuff before Carpenter actually took it back. So maybe there were some influences. Maybe that stuff was stuff Randall started fleshing out and was passed on to Carpenter. I don't know.
That's actually one of the most interesting kind of meta things about, particularly when you think about In the Mouth of Madness, is like what actually, because it keeps rewriting it, right? And so when you're thinking about it as far as the movies go, like we get the end product, but then you have all these other different variations of the movie and these different things, and they're all real too. Like they're as real as the movie that we watch, right? Like they're just a different, I don't know. It's just something that I was sitting there thinking about when I was watching it. I was like, they have these different cuts and they have these different edits, and you read about like, oh, they filmed this scene like this many times, but then like the audience liked this version of it the most, so this is what they actually went with. And it's like, I don't know, it's very I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying. Like it's
No, it does. It does.
On the creative process of how they make these movies and what it be.
There were two other themes I wanted to touch on before we move on, and we can still shoehorn in stuff once we get to other segments, I'm sure, but just two themes that I noted. One was personal freedom versus predestination. And John Trent in The Mouth of Madness, they go to lengths to repeatedly mention that he's a freelance insurance investigator. He doesn't want to be tethered or tied to anything, right? And Robinson keeps trying to get him, oh, you should come work for us. You're fucking great at this. You sniff out all these hoaxes. And he says, I don't want anyone pulling my strings, is a quote from him, right? Which, of course, is exactly what Sutter Kane is literally doing, right? He's a character in someone else's book. So his idea, and he makes a couple of other references, Trent does, Sam Neill, in the movie, to, like, not want it to, like, having his, like, well, if that's what you want to do, and he sort of puts it on everyone making their own decisions. He's very big on that, which isn't really what can happen. And then in Event Horizon, they're traveling along this time-space continuum, and they create this wormhole, and they travel, and it's like a lot of the events that they're trying to influence have like already happened, and they're trying to reverse them in some ways. And it's just the idea of playing with time not being a sort of linear thing that you can jump back and forth to, changes how people's lives are determined. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Trent says it a lot. Nobody pulls my strings. Right before I think Sutter Kane says what I'm gonna say is my favorite line of the movie. Trent says that to him.
Okay.
He says once again, nobody, something like, I know what reality is.
Right.
Nobody pulls my strings. Yeah.
Yeah. The other one was
rationalist in the thing. Like he's very persistent on maintaining a rational view.
Yeah, often in the face of like overwhelming evidence,
Yeah,
which is another thing both his character and both movies share. They're like, I'm going to ignore all the evidence and just go with like what I want. Yeah.
Like Event Horizon, even Lawrence Fishburne's character is the big rationalist in that, but like, I don't know, even when they like first hear the videotape, that's one of my favorite moments when they listen to the videotape of what they're like, oh, what was that? It's like clearly noises of like people screaming and being torn apart or something's going on. They're like, oh, we better go out here and investigate. Like,
I mean, they're kind of getting paid to do that, but I'll defend Fishburne here, in 1 second. But let me get back to I'll defend him first, and then I want to hit my last theme, and then we can move on. Fishburne as Captain Miller is pretty. He's pretty on point. I mean, as soon as shit starts to go south, he literally says, "Fuck this ship."
Yeah.
Fuck this ship. we're leaving. My whole crew's leaving. You can come with us or not. We're going to fuck. And he's like, you're just gonna abandon the ship.
Yeah,
he's
he's
like,
an early believer.
We're gonna fly into space and we're gonna blow this fucking thing up. Yeah.
These aren't just in my mind. This is a real thing.
Yeah. So he gets props for that. But the last one I wanted to bring up as a theme, and I don't know how much traction this will get, but the role of consumerism, which starts out with the printing press in the Mouth of Madness. They're generating these books for money. They're even going to try to scoop up the extra revenue by turning it into a feature film.
He sells even more than Stephen King.
That's what right? He sells more than Stephen King. So, what is the role here of consumerism, at least in the Mouth of Madness? I don't think it has much of a part in Event.
No, I mean, they definitely there's a point where they kind of take a bit from to me, kind of being critical of the Bible, right? Like they even directly say Sutter Kane's talking to him. He's like, I've sold more copies of the Bible. Like what I'm writing is real. And like, you're supposed to sit there and you're kind of like, well, yeah, like you've written this for however long. And people like, if you've sold this many copies and people believe all of this, then they're like, it is real. Like, I mean, it doesn't, when, and that's kind of like the question it's posing is when does it become real? Like, at least I mean, maybe not these things are really happening, but it's really creating things happening, right?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of commentary on consumerism in the Mouth of Madness. There's the opening sequence, which I think could be interpreted in multiple different ways. It's like, look, this is like the mass production, factory production of art in some sense. This is what it is. There's the other interpretation of just like, here is like this industrial power being marshaled to create these weapons against human minds. That would be like the sort of in movie version more or something. But but there's definitely like my first interpretation of it was definitely more like, is this a subtle Carpenter thing about his opinion about the way movies or horror or something like that has gone, this like mass produced just sort of like factory version without auteur or vision.
Yeah,
and he even says that, like Trent says later on when he's on the phone with Robinson, Casey's character, he says something like, he's like, it's pulp horror. It's the same old thing. They're all the same. Slimy things coming out of the night to attack you. Whatever.
Hey, look, I wouldn't put it past Carpenter. I mean, he's concerned with the insignificance of the mercilessness of the infinite universe against man. Like, we know that's the larger theme, but Carpenter, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going that way with consumerism, because I mean, there's a couple other similarities. He has a little bit of a George A. Romero device that he uses when we talked about that in one of the in the very first episode of Chopping It Up, where he sort of advances or enhances the plot through the media. And if you listen to In the Mouth of Madness, there's always a radio on, a TV on. You're going to get backdrop of, the society's falling apart, coming apart at the seams, people are turning to madness. That's always on literally in the background at a low decibel. And I think I like how he uses that to sort of move things along. But yeah, he's certainly making comments through that. But all right, we can always come back. We can always touch on this stuff and pull it up, but let's go ahead and move on to a little fun segment, our favorite kill. For me, I'll go ahead and start off. Jazz, you can come up, and then Michael, we can just toss this back and forth. But for me, I think In the Mouth of Madness, I'm going to go with Miss Pickman as that like tentacled creature hacking up her husband. Was pretty fucking awesome and pretty brutal. And practical. I love practical effects so much better than special effects. To me, I don't know. It just, for me, it just works. For Event Horizon was when Weir hacks up DJ in the medical bay, slices him up, and then pins him up. And that, as Michael said, it is very Hellraiser-esque. So those are my two favorite kills. What do you got, Jazz?
So since those were both my two favorite as well, nice. I'll instead like layer on a little trivia about both of them. So the Pikmin scene is my favorite from In the Mouth of Madness. So the trivia on that one is, so the scene was originally filmed with like a male actor in a bunch of prosthetics doing it, and then Carpenter decided it didn't look realistic enough, and what you end up seeing is basically like a miniature. They constructed some miniature, model of Pikmin for like most of it, and that's what ends up being filmed. The whole, by the way, the whole Pikmin and her husband thing, especially the part where he's like sprawled out across the floor, naked, handcuffed to her leg, I thought was like creepy. And when they show stuff like that, I just want to imagine what it's like on set during the filming of that for everybody.
I want a whole movie of that. I want a whole fucking movie of that.
And then also, I think the DJ scene is the best scene where he gets strung up. The trivia on that one is like the original plan was way more graphic. Like the original plan was going to have his entrails still attached to him as he hung over them, and like maybe like dripping out. Nice. And then the character was supposed to raise his head as he was discovered by Miller, showing that he was still alive. And then Lawrence Fishburne's character was supposed to like shoot him in the head to put him out of his misery. So obviously that was changed. Another fun fact is Jason Isaacs asked to have like his entrails to take them as a souvenir from the movie after knowing what he was going to do with them, but apparently Anderson denied him the request. But yeah, those are my two favorite death scenes as well. Excellent.
What do you got, Sled?
So for Madness, I mean, probably my favorite death scene y'all already copied. I also was going to mention the scene where they cut and she's got her, I guess they don't cut, they screen down and like her husband's chain to her ankle is like, it's such a great scene. The other scenes that I really liked, they weren't death scenes necessarily, were just the scenes when they're going there and they're on the dark highway and the kid goes by on the bike, like, and seeing the come up on the reflectors, and then like he goes by and then the old man version goes by, and like those are like those are great scenes. Like they're just so like they're just the creepiest scenes to me in the whole thing, or some of the creepiest scenes watching it.
Dude, like, yeah. When he crashes the bike. And he's the old man, and then Styles runs over to help him, and he's with the old man face and in the young boy's voice.
Yeah,
I can't get out. He won't let me get out.
Super creepy.
Oh man, that for me, it's that In the Mouth of Madness was way scarier than Event Horizon for me, because I don't know, it was about people. Even though you're examining those larger issues, which we've already fleshed out, like it's still like these person-to-person interactions. With Event Horizon, everything is concentrated on like this demonic force, these demons from another dimension, and then like a lot of the sci-fi stuff. I mean, the first 35 minutes of Event Horizon, you got to set the table, and it's all pure sci-fi, like pure sci-fi. There's no horror in that, and I'm not saying that even like pejoratively, like I normally would. I just mean like I'm waiting, and it is sci-fi horror.
It's not as nuanced. I mean, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of like, it's very straight. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's kind of like what I talked about. There's no points. I mean, it has jump scares. It has stuff where it's like, ugh, like it fucking freaks you out, right? Or things that feel very like heavy, but it's not. Yeah, they have connections, and there's definitely influences, but they are like the vibes are just so different on the two different movies.
All right, boys, we got to move because
In the Mouth of Madness. My favorite for Event Horizon actually, they're actually both, I think, have to do with Justin. So the scene when he first puts his hand, when the gate first opens and he like gets dragged in there, but then even more so the scene where he's goes into the airlock and gets sucked out into space. That's probably my favorite death scene in that, like where he goes out there and he's like talking to them, and it's very like they're trying to convince him. Then all of a sudden it's like he switches and he's like, I haven't decided if when he starts talking, because he comes all of a sudden he's aware of what he's doing, and then all of a sudden he's like, save me, talking to them, right? He switches from like, he's just like, you don't want to like, and is that whatever this thing is that's possessing them, talking to them, like trying to fuck with them, because it's like the whole thing is like playing on their fears and their regrets and like just messing with them. You think back to the captain, the thing that keeps messing with him is a guy he left behind. But then like, I don't know, I always liked the way they did it when it fights. It's like, oh, it's happening, and they show his arm. I thought that was a neat effect when they suck down and they show like it didn't look. I don't know. I have no idea. Like, there's people who get really into the nerd. Like, that's not what would happen if you like decompressed into space or whatever. Like,
Right.
there's like a thunder sound and lightning the whole time they're in space, which you, as far as I know, would not hear. Like, I'm not too worried about like, but the way, like, I don't know, it was just a very visceral feeling scene, like when he did that whole thing of going out into space, and then I don't know, but it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost. I mean,
Definitely the most emotional death, I would say.
huh?
Yeah.
It's the most emotional death from Event Horizon, that's for sure.
All right. So let's move on to the next segment, which is the soundtrack or music. I'll go ahead and lead off here. The soundtrack for Event Horizon was, let's see, I'll go right to my notes. Terrible techno blend with orchestral elements at the end credits. And then I read up on it. Anderson wanted a band, I guess a band called Orbital, which sounds like a shitty band, that played the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. He wanted them, but Paramount execs balked at hiring unknowns, so they quote unquote married the sounds. And then I have in all caps and underlined yuck. So that's where I come out on that. For In the Mouth of Madness. Oh God, we have a lot. Yeah, the Carpenter. Well, so the opening song, which is sort of mimics Metallica's.
Yeah, they wanted Metallica, but couldn't get the rights, right?
Couldn't get the rights. Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna leave that one where it is. I'll say one thing about it, but I know Jazz has a lot of good bits on that. The lead guitarist on that fake Enter Sandman is Kinks band member Dave Davies, plays lead guitar on that.
Oh wow! That's
So
awesome.
that's what I have. Jazz, what do you got?
No, I mean, the main thing for me is just I know that the visual theme they were going after in Event Horizon, I think they named it like techno medieval, and I think they just like basically attempted to like make the soundtrack match that. You know, other than like I think some of the things that Michael mentioned earlier with like the deep bass things, which I think they hit periodically throughout the movie. Like the soundtrack doesn't really like stand out like a lot to me. Whereas I think like the soundtrack in I think as with everything Carpenter, I think the sort of like uses of silences, especially before like little creepy bits or scares, and like the kind of like slow creepy music at like periods of uncertainty and stuff like that are much better. But I also just think like he's very economical with it. He's very comfortable using silence and just sort of like letting the scenes sort of play themselves. I think a good example of that is when they first arrive at like the Pickman Hotel, and like Linda has already started to like realize that, hey, like something is really off. Like all this stuff is from the book. She hasn't vocalized it yet, but she's acting it out in sort of her behavior. When she notices the painting, and like a bunch, the painting changes every time she looks at it. I think it even moves. Like she sees it move at one point, and like she jumps in. But all of that is just, I think, with silence.
Right.
And I think it, I think it's like stronger for it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add on that. I mean, like my thought mostly from Madness was the soundtrack was not a huge part of it. Like it was not like it was very tactfully used, I guess I would say. Like it's a lot of like it's not going overboard. It wasn't meant to be a big part of creating a vibe. I think in Horizon they were shooting to use, as I mentioned earlier, the Shining, kind of that heavy bass stuff to kind of unsettle you at certain points. And then there's a lot of one of the biggest sound effects they're using in it. It's not music, but is the thunder and lightning kind of effect, which is again supposed to be ominous. Probably wouldn't hear it at all if you're in space, at least as far as I know. The funniest thing, Jay, did you ever play Oblivion?
Oh yeah.
It reminded me very much. I don't know if they copied it that much. It may just be canned noise that they produced it. But when you go into the portals into where the
Oh yeah, it does sound like that.
it sounds
Yeah.
exactly like that whole world.
It does.
Like lightning.
Yeah, a little bit burbly, liquidy. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the same like that. Just But that was the main thing. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I know that the video game sound that they used when the blinds opened at the beginning of the movie
I know what you're gonna
with
say.
Sam Neill's character.
It's like a
they
whooshing
literally
sound.
Yeah, the whoosh. They ripped that off of the original Doom video game for like when doors open and stuff like that. So
Good pull. All right, guys, I want to keep us moving. So we got 2 segments left before we close out for the night, and we still have a lot of ground to cover. So we're going to go to the next segment, which is our favorite quotes or best lines, and then we're going to tidy it up with questions, which I have a feeling we're going to take a good deal on the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off for best lines or quotes, and then Jazz, and then Michael, which I think Michael already got. So you know what? I'm not going to say that one because I think Michael already said it. I'm going to let him say
one?
it. The Cooper one.
No, say it.
Is that your favorite?
Oh,
all right. The Cooper quote. What about you? What about you, Stark? You want something hot and black inside you?
Actually, the best part of
coffee.
For example, how like he's talking like how would you like some coffee? Like he follows
right, right, yeah, right. As we were talking, the other one was just the straight up the Lawrence Fishburne, Captain Miller. You know, we're leaving. Fuck this ship. And I just maybe it was his delivery because it doesn't sound like anything great shakes, but it's pretty blunt. It's pretty awesome, and it's like not what a horror movie character would do, which is just cut and leave immediately after seeing some bad shit. Which is what he does. He makes all the right decisions. But the other quote from In the Mouth of Madness. I did like it's sort of a throwaway line, but like we talk about him, there were these threads of dark humor throughout that weren't present in Event Horizon. So it was when Trent first gets tossed in the insane asylum in the opening scene.
I know what it's going to be.
And he just yells, "I'm sorry about the balls. It was just a lucky shot." And I love that. Like that's my favorite. So
that's a great one from that's one of the good ones from In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah. What do you got, Jazz?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure the one I would say from Event Horizon is the one Michael's going to say, so I'm not even going to say it. I'll say it if he doesn't say it.
Do it.
Okay. Well, there's not like a ton of quotable stuff from Event Horizon. Really.
Yeah.
So, it's really the one which is like where they finally discover, Weir on the bridge in the captain's chair after he's completely lost it and gouged out his eyes. And, Miller's like, "Dear God, what happened to you?" Or like, "What have you done?" And, then of course Weir says, "Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see," which is like the famous one from that one. In the Mouth of Madness, you mentioned, "I'm sorry about the balls. It was just a lucky shot," which is wonderful. Of course, there's the one that Simon says, where he says, "Reality isn't what it used to be."
Yeah.
But then I think the one that's kind of like best and like kind of encapsulates the movie, and it's also just kind of from my favorite scene or sequence overall from the movie, is when Trent is protesting to Kane, when Kane is finally revealing all, and he's like, "I know it's real," or something, and he's like, "There's no one pulls my strings," and then Kane says, "I think, or I write, therefore you are."
That's right.
Yeah, so I think that's a play on the Descartes line. So I think I'll go with the last one, since I think it also probably most appropriately encapsulates the movie.
Well done. Sled, what do you got?
So for Event Horizon, my favorite line that
what is it?
It's from the same setting that Jay's talking about, but when Lawrence Fishburne's like, you miss me, you blow out the hull," and he says, "What makes you think I'll miss?" And it's like his eyes are gone, and he's like so it's just really funny. He's like, "What makes you think I'll miss?" Like it's very commanding, but like it's just like very, I don't know, it's a very arrogant, like the way he delivers it is like, "What makes you think I'll miss?" Like he's like very like even fucking around, like, "What makes you," like he's like, "I'm gonna fucking shoot you." Like my favorite,
it's a hard line.
From In the Mouth, this is random, but when he goes and when he's first gotten out and he's at the motel and he goes in there and he's like, and the one guy who's working the counter, like, is like, oh, like, blah, 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 and gives him like, oh, the script showed up for you. And he's like, oh, like, no one knows I'm here, blah, blah, blah. And he's like asking the guy, and then like the big burly guy just comes out of nowhere. Like, I was, and I didn't even see shit. Like, and they just cut away.
Yeah. That's a good call.
Fucking scene. Like, it's such like a random, like, that it's just like, that's it. Like, there's nothing more to it. Like, they don't expound on it, whatever. Like, I don't know.
That could have been like a whole movie in and of itself. Like everything that was going on. It's like, is it father and son, or like what is,
All right. Those are excellent. I think we got everything we could get out of that. So the question section, which we added on after our first episode or two, really to just sort of tidy up any loose ends or strings or plot lines that we didn't feel were resolved, any inconsistencies, or anything that just occurred to us as we watched. I'll lead off here again, but I am also missing a couple of tidbits which have no relevance, and I couldn't shoehorn them in, so they get shoehorned in here. In Event Horizon, the model of the Event Horizon contains a complete, for you fucking Star Wars nerds, a complete X-Wing fighter as part of the antenna array, if you look closely.
Right.
And on the main airlock to dock on the Event Horizon is the numeral 13 as an unlucky 13. The alternative title for Event Horizon was The Stars, My Destination, which was based on a 1957 Alfred Bester novel about a guy who acquires the ability to teleport. In the Mouth of Madness, Hobbs End, Hob meaning devil, as in hobgoblin, from the 1967 British sci-fi horror film Quatermass and the Pit, where the discovery of an ancient burial ground is called Hobbs End. Rutger Hauer was initially considered for the role of Sutter Kane, because that would rock. I think Rutger Hauer would have knocked it out of the park. The Doberman scene where they attack all of the fucking people outside the church. Multiple stuntmen were, quote, seriously injured and sent to the hospital in that Doberman scene. So I guess they got out of hand, which definitely kills my idea to get a second dog. That would be a Doberman. When Styles gets out of the car and does that weird crab-like walk, they had a legitimate contortionist do the role and wear the mask. The movie that Trent is watching in the Mouth of Madness in that motel, which I guess we could do a whole other movie on that motel, is called Robot Monster from 1953. It's a John Carpenter favorite monster movie that he watched as a kid. My question, I guess let's get right to the questions here. My first question is about the church that Sutter Kane inhabits in the Mouth of Madness. I don't know that I had a direct question. He holds up there in the movie if you haven't seen it, and that's where they eventually find him in Hobbs End in this giant church where he's writing, and he's got this a bunch of Dobermans there. I did some research. It's called the Black Church. It is a 20-story cathedral. It's a 20-story building.
Transfiguration.
That's right, a Slovak Greek Catholic church. It began construction in 1984. Apparently, it is still incomplete today. In 2006, they basically decommissioned it. They tore out its altar. It's no longer technically a church. It is just a big empty building sitting there very creepily. So I just wanted to get all those out of the way. Let's get to my questions here if I can find them. Well, my questions for Event Horizon, which is half rhetorical, but if anyone could answer, why do they share all their cigarettes? I used to smoke. There's no way I would take 2 hits of a cigarette and just hand someone my cigarette. I don't understand why. Did you notice that, or is it just me?
I can't believe you brought this up, because that was actually one of my things when watching Madness was the fake smoking.
The fake smoking?
Yeah, I mean, like, did they ever show him like take a big drag and fucking blow out a puff of smoke?
Sam Neill is fucking pounding them, dude. He makes me want to smoke.
Yeah, he was. There was ever a scene where he's blowing out clearly inhaled smoke? Because, like, if you're a smoker, I don't know.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's a dude. Sam Neill right now is smoking a cigarette somewhere. There's no way that was fake.
I saw several scenes where he's smoking, but I never saw one where he took a lot of drags or was really smoking.
So that was a rhetorical question. I guess I shouldn't go through all of them. Let me get one more, which is more an observation, then I'll bounce it. We can start just chiming in.
And in space, you share your cigarettes because you only got so many.
I was gonna say maybe that's it in Event Horizon that they were rationing them, but like if you're gonna ration they were just tossing cigarettes like it was nothing, dude. Like one hit here, and then Jazz, you smoke the rest of it, and then I'll light up another one and hand it off to you, Sled. Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know if they were smoking like for everything, but I now I want to rewatch it just to be like if they're smoking also during the part where it's like, we don't have that much air and our CO2 scrubbers are fucked. But if they, yeah,
Jazz, Sam Neill wakes up out of the what do you call it, the lock, when they're in the suits in the or not in the water lock, and like he can barely breathe and he can barely stand up, and fucking someone walks up and like tries to hand him a cigarette. It's crazy. The other thing is, speaking of Sam Neill,
basically, a giant piece of shit in Event Horizon, right? Like he's just
for sure. Oh yeah. But let me just get this last one out, and then we can do whatever. And this isn't even a question. It's a comment. I'll just write exactly what I wrote. That's right. I think it's funny. Sam Neill looks like a baked potato with arms and legs. A very confusing physique. That's what I wrote down. And
okay, so.
All right, go ahead.
So one of my questions for Event Horizon is like when they're preparing for the grav tank or getting out of the grav tank, I have it as Sam Neill is definitely like severely sucking in his gut, right? Like he is sucking in his gut like crazy, like for that, because he's like walking around like stiff, like a goddamn He-Man toy from like 1982. And yeah, I mean he's like sucking in his gut because his physique looks. I agree, it looks weird as shit.
It looks absurd.
Yeah.
Looks absurd. Sled, you got any questions that jumped out? Either movie, you can go anywhere. No,
I mean, my biggest questions are usually relating to just typical horror movie questions where it's like, why would you keep doing what you're doing, like as you're approaching a situation, like right, like I don't know, what I mean. I think some of the, particularly with Event Horizon, there's various things that I think were explained better, supposedly, if they still had the uncut version, like why Justin decided to stick his hand into the fucking black hole thing. Like who would do that? Who's like they're so concerned about being safe the whole time, and then he's just like sticks his hand into this thing to see what's in there. Like there's some
and he knows what it is too.
Yeah,
like they say like, oh, that's the gravity drive of the ship. He's he's an engineer. He's not just some idiot.
Yeah, like what the fuck? Like why would you do that? Chaz, did you have any?
Oh yeah, I got a few. Yeah. So you mentioned the Sam Neill sucking in his gut. Yeah, he's definitely sucking in his gut. Is my opinion on what's going on with his physique. The other one is like and this is different from the script. I read this part of the script in Event Horizon. When Weir first plays like the recording that they captured from the Event Horizon from after its reappearance, and like Weir says something like, the guys in Houston have tried to decipher it and no one can tell what it means, and then immediately the doctor is like, wait, that's Latin. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? No one in the whole goddamn U.S. government can like figure this shit out.
That's actually the question that predates that precedes as. Why is this guy talking in Latin? Like, I get that he's getting torn apart or whatever, but he wasn't brought up speaking.
Latin. Dude. Demons always speak Latin.
Asshole.
The interdimensional demons are Latin.
They're Latin demons.
And
I
have Liberate Tutame here. An hour in, we couldn't pick that up before. Or the Infernus or whatever it was. Yeah, the Latin.
In the script, it's not the doctor who figures it out. It's like it's already Weir already has that figured out from originally because
really?
The government, because obviously people can decipher that. Like in the U.S. government, it doesn't take like one doctor on the ship. And then I love when they discover the ship's log on the bridge. So I guess my question is basically, so we can control gravity, create artificial gravity, create wormholes, but like to record the ship's log, do I have this? Is that a CD?
It's
like a regular. He's like, record the ship's log, but don't overwrite. I just spent 40 hours downloading my Napster thing. It's it's completely like ridiculous.
You erased my whole Stone Temple Pilots album.
Exactly
right.
That's like a feeling of anything that's set in the future. Like
I know they always have like some backward.
You go watch like Star Trek, and it's just like Jesus fucking Christ. Like it's like
where are the vapes, guys? You're still smoking cigarettes?
Okay.
And then In the Mouth, I have some from In the Mouth of Madness. Most of them are around Linda. So at a certain point, like, you know, I think it's after the church, like Trent wants to hurry up and get out of there. Linda's like, I know what's going on, or whatever. And all of a sudden she just starts making out with him. Like,
yo, that was my question. That was my question. Why
Yeah.
does Styles kiss Trent? And like, why is she? I don't understand. Is
She
trying to
makes with everything.
and then immediately,
She makes out with Sutter Kane. Like she just
that's my other thing.
The
Like
whole vibe of
immediately
the-
after,
the whole vibe of the
she's-
5 minutes
well,
later, she's in the church making out with Sutter Kane. Like, is this like a meta commentary on like, oh, this is what the audience wants? Like, love, you know, or is this just like
She said
because
because
like Linda's super horny, or
baby, no, because she tries to make out with Trent in the car as well.
In the car.
He wrote me this way. Sutter Kane is doing this because
you
we
just
need.
reminded me of one
we
of my
need-
favorite things because
yeah,
Norbert, our buddy, also says that when they kill him, he just wrote me this way when he.
That's
killed him.
right.
yeah.
Yeah, all this
They
shit's
show his
explained.
hand, which I thought was maybe supposed to be instead of showing him blow his head off, they just show his hand fall down with blood. 'Cause
Yeah.
he's a boxer, right? So you see his hand. I don't know. So maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
I didn't think of that, but I like that. But I'm pretty sure they didn't intend that. But that's good. Can we talk about DJ for a second? I think why does DJ in Event Horizon he holds a knife to Smitty's throat for no fucking reason? Just we're talking about overreaction, like whatever the argument was about, and he immediately fucking whips a fucking scalpel at his trachea,
I think
and then
he's
like
supposed to be the rationalist. He's a doctor. He's the guy with the most like.
I think they were trying to show him starting to lose it.
Yeah,
Or like
that's what
him
I'm
getting
saying.
affected
He's
by
the
things.
rationalist, so them facing these things is the most disturbing to him. Like it's like,
Yeah.
right, and that was my spin on it. Like, yeah, because he goes from whatever, like, and they're supposed to be freaked out too, right? Like they're like Lawrence Fishburne's like, like trying to like kind of vibing at him that you're like, why are you having
right.
scalpel?
I did have, I guess, I mean, I have a couple other wonky ones, but I have a serious one here for Event Horizon. So, and we skipped over it, but we didn't really get into it, but we could dig into it at least for a few minutes here. In Event Horizon, if Weir is sucked into space from the ship, how can you come back to fight Miller? Or was this just the ship or the demons like fucking with Miller's mind? Like maybe that didn't actually happen. Maybe he did get sucked out and was dead.
I interpreted it as that's the possibility, because like so you remember where Miller had the first hallucination. So if you remember when Weir was crawling around in the tunnel with the circuits and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and then the flaming guy rises out of like the pool underneath the gravity drive. That was like Miller's first hallucination when he's like, oh, this is real. Like this stuff is actually happening. Like I feel the heat, all that stuff. That's exactly where Weir appears from after he's been, you know, so when Miller is getting ready to destroy the gravity drive or whatever. So I interpret it as like, it's the ship doing its thing, you know, making him see things, not that, you know, not that Weir has returned.
I don't think it's weird at all.
Well, so that's my other question.
The
And
thing
then,
can make that whatever it is, obviously, can create. It's a glamour, right? Like it can make just
Okay.
images of anything it wants, right? So if it's him or not, like from us watching the movie, that's a fine perspective to associate with the character, but it could just be anything. It could be just the thing that's making stuff that it possesses now. It reads people's minds to create all this other stuff, so it could easily create like once he gets sucked out of the spaceship, is it ever him after that? Ever? I don't. I mean,
right.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but also my question that dovetails right into like, has the ship actually gained sentience itself, or is the evil that the portal opens up to these demons, are they controlling the ship?
So in the movie, I think it is Stark's character who says that the ship has gained sentience, or like the ship is the one doing it. I mean, that's just a theory. That
they support that because they're like, we're getting really weird readings. Like when he goes into the one room, or it's like when she first does a life scan of the thing, it's like we're getting scattered. It's like there's life scattered all over the ship, right? Rather than like individual things. It's like,
no, well, the life scan stuff, they mention it specifically when the gravity drive is active. So like when the ship does something, you know, when the gravity drive is active, when the ship like actually takes an action, it's like life scans are going off the charts. So it's like, is it the ship or is it something operating through the gravity drive, on the ship? I don't think that there's a definitive answer, but, certainly at minimum, the ship is the antenna through which they're operating or something like that,
Yeah.
Okay. Another question, which is a legitimate question. This one's for In the Mouth of Madness. If the publishers sent Kane away as a publicity stunt, but he legitimately disappeared, then isn't the insurance claim legitimate? Like, they position this as if they were fucking it up and it was a hoax the whole time, but it never, she says, like, at first it was real, but now we didn't know he really disappeared. So, like, blah, blah, blah. But the whole time you filed the claim knowing that you didn't know where he was and you were just going to drive around with Trent and not discover anything. So, like, isn't the whole claim legitimate?
I'm not sure because, like, I don't know, like, the story of what they were doing with the hoax came from Linda. So, like, is that even real, or is it just like other convenience in the story?
We're going, so
yep.
I mean, like, that's the whole thing. Is like the entire movie is like questioning what's actually. I mean, he wrote everything. Is in theory,
right? So and that was my other question, which was like, there are scenes purely and solely from Linda Stiles's perspective, from her view. Yeah. No one else is there. We're seeing what she sees.
When Sam Neill is asleep.
Right. Did any of that happen?
It happened in the sense that they're both characters in a book that Sutter Kane wrote. So it happened at that level, right? So
I guess. All right, last one for me, and then I think we probably get close to wrapping here. What are the Cthulhu mythos? CTH. What is the CTHULHU?
I mean, that's going to be like a whole series of podcasts or something.
Holy
like
shit! Okay, but, just try to give me your broadest.
He's like one of the elder gods. I mean, it depends. I mean, it's not consistent. Similar to Jesus and any other god.
You don't need to know like what the specific god is, but it's basically like they're the old gods who, whatever, depending on which version of the mythos, it's like they existed before man. In various stories they like have been exiled somewhere. In other stories it's they left on their own accord to like take some tour or something.
Time.
They're far away.
Like a big giant. He's very associated with if you ever see like a big squid, like so True Detective actually kind of does some stuff that's like related to Cthulhu.
Well, that's where I'd first heard it. Yeah.
But so Cthulhu, like he's a big squid-headed fuck. Like he lives under the sea. Like he's a sleeping, but like he gets mixed up with Dagon. Sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of mix on this stuff. If you see tentacles though, and like a big squid thing.
Or like Pikmin, like Miss Pikmin, right? Or like the thing in the greenhouse.
When they talk in the greenhouse, so there was this thing in here that was like, but there's like I mean, Lovecraft was like all those guys. I mean, they were working around not that long after Tolkien and stuff, and like I mean, but they were big on world building, and like all these guys were like really educated on. A lot of it was like linguistics and the like mythology and all this stuff. So they were good at creating like these like god figures that were like in creating a mythology that's like I don't know. That's one of the most interesting things about reading some of that old stuff. They were so educated on it that they were good at constructing these things to where you felt kind of like this feels kind of real. Like it feels like the creepiness factor. Like they I don't know. They got in there good.
Right. No, yeah. Thank you for
explaining that. The mythos involves like there's a ton of like, and there's like if you want to get into the weeds of it, there's like the stuff that he wrote about versus like the spin-offs. I mean, I know you hate comics, Jesse, but it's like spin-off after spin-off for all this.
Yeah, people have just taken the theme and done their own thing with it in all kinds of different ways.
All right, guys. We got one more thing, and then I'm going to wrap here. Let's go ahead and give it our patented meat cleaver rating. I give Event Horizon 2.75 meat cleavers. To my knowledge, that's the first time any number has been split that way. It was too sci-fi for me, which probably means I'm not a huge fan of cosmic horror. The first 35 minutes, like I mentioned before, was sort of just setting up the plot. We're in pure sci-fi territory. We're in spaceships heading to Proxima Centauri and like explaining wormholes and time travel, just like nerd shit. Once we get fans, I assume I'm going to get a lot of blowback on that, but no one's listening. Once we got to the demons and the killings, I was totally back in, but just not really my thing. It's good though if that's what you're into, and it's definitely worth a watch. Obviously, if we went through, I gave In the Mouth of Madness a solid 4 meat cleavers. This one kind of snuck up on me. Like I said, I loved it back in the day, in my teens and 20s, but I wasn't sure how it would hold up. But it was perfect, man. It was much more gory than I remember, creepy, well paced. I mean, Carpenter just virtuoso shit here. So I really liked it. Jazz, what do you got?
I was even harsher on Event Horizon than you. I actually went 2.5.
Yeah.
Just because I think there's so much unexplained with the characters, especially like Weir's character getting to where he is and doing that stuff. And so there's like it's the plotting is kind of like weak in that way. And I think it's maybe not Anderson's fault. It's all the editing stuff that was imposed on him. But the movie's just not fun enough to stand up to that kind of those kinds of gaps. I think if Lawrence Fishburne were not in this movie and not like carrying the weight of the gravity of this movie and just like, I mean, I want to be on his crew. He's so good in this movie. And like, so you can trust him so much. Like if Lawrence Fishburne wasn't doing his Lawrence Fishburne shit, this movie would be like 1.75 or something. Like that. That's how much worse it would be.
That's a good call.
And Mouth, I'm right with you. 4 stars. I'm just like, it's really well plotted, really well written, manages to also be fun. I think Neil plays it in this like slightly comedic way at parts, and it like doesn't detract I think from the horror at all. There's definitely some weird stuff with Linda at the end, and that I could easily see it knocking down a little bit, but it could also just be like this whole meta narrative thing that they have going on that is fine. It's just like really well done, incredible job for $8 million with the special effects, to be honest. Holds up. It's great.
Sled.
I think I would give Event Horizon. Y'all are harsh, I guess. I'm trying to be comparing it to historically. If I'm thinking about, I would probably give it like a 3. The biggest thing I like about Event Horizon is I like. First of all, I think it's scary. Like, if you show that movie to a kid, it'll scare them, right? Like,
yeah.
Maybe not an adult as much, but I think it'll scare them. And then I also think this is something I like about both of them is like this idea, but in particular, Event Horizon is like this idea of, when you think of the supernatural, a lot of times you're thinking of the supernatural as like, oh, it's magic versus like, oh, it's, you kind of get into this stuff. Is it entered, like talking about wormholes and these spaces in between, dark matter, which I thought was kind of an underlying vibe as far as like what is coming. Like we have dark matter. If you like have a basic understanding of physics, you're like, well, dark matter, what is it? We have this whole mass of the universe out here that we don't even know what it is. We can't see it, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's supposed to be some of that intruding onto the theory behind it. So this idea that there's scary stuff out there that we would maybe consider supernatural that we don't understand, I think it like touches the edge of that. And I like that aspect of it. But there's obviously some issues with the movie. Lawrence Fishburne is great. I think there's like, actually, one of my favorite characters in it is Would You Like Something Hot and Black? And like that guy,
Cooper, yeah.
He just does a great job. All of his scenes are excellent. I really like his character in it. Madness, like actually, I was going into this movie honestly thinking it was going to be kind of a piece of shit.
Joel, if you're still listening, can you fucking believe it?
Not because of Joel, but just like, like when it came out, and like when I've seen so many like HP Lovecraft movies that are just like really fucking bad. Like just like really bad. And so I was like kind of questioning it when I went in. It's the time period, and it is like it has things, but like I said, it grew on me like a cancer. And so
Excellent.
There's no part of it that I felt was scared. Like there was no part of it where I came upstairs and like, do you ever have that when you walk down a hallway, even though you're a fucking 45-year, I mean, I'm not 45 yet, but y'all are, walking down a hallway and like, there's something like it's dark behind you and you start a little faster, you jump on your bed. Like, there was nothing about it that made me feel that way, but the movie, it's a really smart movie. Like there's so much stuff going on in it. Like I really appreciate, like, and I said,
dude, how many meat cleavers? What are we doing here?
4
meat cleavers. Wait, that's
if you gotta get above 4, you gotta scare my ass.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, you gotta freak me out. But yeah, 4.
I wonder if In the Mouth of Madness has been like the collectively highest rated one, like the most.
We'll have to do an aggregate. Yeah, we all gave it 4s. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great horror movie, and there's no question that it's a horror movie. It is. So Jacob's Ladder is the best of the movies we've rated that I've rated.
Right.
As a horror movie, it's
very
different.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, let's go ahead and close it out. I think that about does it for us this week. Thanks to everyone out there listening. Hope you guys are enjoying the show, and do please reach out. Let us know if you have any recommendations for movie pairings or suggestions, feedback, or questions. We're happy to respond. For our 5th episode, I am intent upon dragging down the intellectual discourse here. So to that end, I'm putting us squarely back into slasher territory, i.e. the OG horror movie subgenre. None of this space station tripe, none of this faux reality garbage. That's right. With spring upon us and summer just around the corner, you know where I'm taking us, to summer camp. We'll be reviewing the slasher classic Sleepaway Camp, as well as The Burning. Lots of gore, horny camp counselors, titties, dysfunctional kids, and much, much more. So thanks again for joining us. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can shoot us an email at choppingituphorrorpod@gmail.com. Again, that's choppingituphorrorpod@gmail.com. We're up on all major streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Line Notes, and YouTube. You can also check us out on Instagram at choppingituphorrorpod. Thanks again for listening, folks, and we will see you next time on Chopping It Up.
I'm sorry about the balls. It was a lucky shot, that's all. What?